Shalom, peace. All right, let's get started. I think we got everybody up. You ready to go? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer. And it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect. Today's message, Aman. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Osaya Nikitabuya, Ohio. I see you. Manut, Wagwan, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Ensemble. Habarigani, Aquaba, Madase, Etese, Jambo, Mimi Kofi ni Franco Kutano Wewe, Boker To, Boker Tav, Grand Rising, Bakwarta, Parakala Cham Yahava, Atnai, Kovain, Hello to Servants of Christ, Mashanamchi. Hello, everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We're thankful and grateful and appreciative to each and every one of you for being on with us again. We give our honor and praise once again to the Most High Yah. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma, who lives a life that is able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N. Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Teda, at Yahara Shan, excuse me. Thank you, everybody, for being on with us, and we're grateful and thankful and appreciative to have each and every one of you. Thank you for coming over from Thursday Rising Prayer if you were able to make it, and thank you for lifting up each other. Thank you to Elder Select Nais for leading us once again in that regard, and we're thankful and grateful to have another opportunity to keep going through this word. Hashtag a safe place. Prayerfully, you guys are still hashtag start strong. Don't forget, we're in the midst of our fasting. We've been asking everybody, if you can, bare minimum, if you can, to have nothing but water. I was obedient. Got my hot water. Amen. Actually, almost spilled a little bit on my ankles, but almost spilled some of it on myself this rising. Wanted to make sure we were obedient. So we got the hot water and everything flowing and going. Amen. So we're thankful and grateful to each and every one of you for being on with us. And hopefully you guys are doing well. Thank you to the MITs who are doing their thing and continuing to get their training in, getting some terms and stuff yesterday. Proud of y'all. Keep on moving. Thank you, everybody who's on all the platforms. And those who will come on later on, looks like we're kind of having a little bit of whatever to start off today. But we're thankful and grateful to each and every one of you for being on with us on this rising. We are going to be trying to go on a couple different platforms live during this. So, and keep us in prayer. We're praying that personally, not SOC wise, but personally, I can have a little bit more coming in and save up a little bit, and we'll be able to get a couple more devices, and that way we can have some of these other platforms going where persons might be looking for us. But thank you all for being on. Prayerfully, you guys are doing well. Prayerfully, you guys are staying strong. Prayerfully, you guys are committed to the outcome which Yah has for you, working out your own salvation with fear and trembling. So, shalom, peace to everybody. Thank you for being on. We're going to go ahead and get started. We'll get ready to say our Bible pledge in just a bit. So if you'd like to join us, feel free to. Ooh. All righty, let's say shalom to everybody real quick, and we'll get ready to do our Bible pledge and jump right into the series. Praise Yah. How you doing? Elder Select Nais, Don, Cultural Prospect, Beck, Lana, or is it Lena? Lana, please forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. Everybody on the podcast, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, those who will be joining us on platforms later on, or if you watch this later on, thank you so much for being on with us. Let's see, Sister Monica, Dr. T, Sister Mavis, Bruder Charlie, Brother Darius, let's see, Legacy, Johnny, User 76488, etc. You're in prayer. Speaker was acting up already. Amen. How you doing, Calvin? How you doing, Shawnee? Everybody, Daryl. I don't know how to say Passive Duke. Not sure if that's the name. Fanny Watson or Fanny Watson. Not sure. Probably Fanny Watson. Let's see. User 89430. Michael, Robert. User 1025908088, etc. Micha or Mika. Please forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. How you doing, Darius? Everybody, come on in. Alrighty. So we're gonna get started. Probably notifications looks like aren't being sent out. So thank you to those. I see some of you who are sharing. Thank you to moderators and everybody for doing what you do. Appreciate love y'all. Oh, only announcement I have for tonight, besides the fact that we are submitting at least the first bit of names. So if you didn't fill out your stuff for our events and stuff, pretty much the names are being submitted today for us to start going through and start making calls and stuff like that. But if you haven't submitted the names, we're going to be going through your stuff for the events coming up that we asked for you guys to look into. Also, too, if you are in Northeast region, well, let's just do I mean, almost just about everybody except. So if you're in the Northeast region, Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, uh, uh, Caribbean, Texas, Oklahoma, SOC West. I think that so basically everybody except for if you're with the Alabama region, which is all the states that are under Minister Shante. If you're in the if you're so basically if you're in that region, which is basically what Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky. I'm missing somebody in there. I said Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama. I'm missing somebody. I'm sorry. Tennessee and Kentucky. I'm having a moment with my geography. But if you're in those states, if you are in the Central North region with Elder Selects, Anais, and Tamara, and if you are in, that might be it, actually. I think if so, outside of those, I think everybody's having a meetup. So what we'll do is, if you would like to, even if you're in those regions, you can show up. I'll send the Google Calendar invite out to everybody if you'd like to show up. But obviously, I'm going to be focusing in on those regions and those particular places. So prayerfully, we hear from you at some point. How you doing, Mindful Moments? How you doing, Sister Joy? How you doing, Nima? Into the deep. Alrighty, so we can go ahead and get into this word. How you doing, Sister Judith, Queen Ennis? Oh, also too, if you're in Mexico, or I know some of you guys are in other places too, so around Mexico, so feel free to join up with us today. The meeting will be at 9 p.m. New York time, so right after our live session in the evening, we'll be going right into we'll be going into our meeting for you guys. So we can technically say this is for everybody, but obviously if you're in those two places, please make sure that the ministerial staff is aware of what you're doing. Dr. T, I'm going to get with you at some point so we can make sure that we get you some new names to reach out to in the Northeast region, but you guys are basically going to be rolling with us. How you doing, Kirsten? Everybody on here, how you doing? Happy? You said you're in New York? Yeah, so basically Northeast region includes New York. Think of well, it's not correct, but think of what people try to call the original 13 colonies. If you look at it that way, then you guys are going to be in that Northeast region. All right. How you doing, Pastor? Pastor Doctor, Daniel, Brother Lamar. If I miss anybody on any platform, turn it to my head, not to my heart. We're going to go ahead and get right into this. Praise y'all. All righty. So let's say our Bible pledge and jump right in. Amen. If you can stand to your feet or however you're able to reverence Yahweh's word. I know some of you might be on the move. Also, too, we know that for many of you, weather is crazy right now, so please be careful out there. My brother, my sister, please be careful. Amen. Alrighty, and Yam Yasalav, happy born day to those with January born days. Keep on pushing. I know there's more, but right now the only ones that come to my mind, Big Brother Thomas and Brother Ali. So prayerfully, you guys are keeping them in mind. Praise Yah. And anybody else, I know we've had a couple others. I've even said Yam Yasalav to some of you. There's a lot of us. Alrighty, praise Yah. Alrighty, okay, here we go. So you can just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. In this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yahweh. Haman. In Yahweh's name, his Shem, his authority. Amen. Alrighty. Today, we're focusing in on a safe, and you may be seated and go back to what you're doing in the presence of Yah. Thank you so much. Today we're going to focus on the series, continuing the series, hashtag a safe place. Our focal point today will be law and case study. Law and case study. Praise Yah. Once again, series is hashtag a safe place. It's been going on since January the 1st. Today, we're going to focus on, oh, okay. It was okay, you turned 44 on Monday. Okay, praise y'all for you, big bro. I'm on. Happy born day. All right, today we're going to be talking about law and case study. I was like, I know there's some born days that I haven't seen. Anyway, sorry about that. So, law and case study. Now, we've said this, we haven't really brought this up in a minute, but we've said this before, and we say this pretty consistently, that the Bible is law and case study, right? It's law and case study for a particular people, by the way. So it's not law and case study for everybody. So when somebody tells you that they don't believe in the Bible or keeping law, or law is something that you should get rid of, it's because they're not the people of Yah. Right? Let's just throw it out there, right? If you're not the people of Yah, people meaning nation, if you're not the nation of Yah, then yeah, it's not for you. It's not for you as law, and it's not for you as case study. Because if we talk about case study is even a legal or lawful term, right? If somebody doing case study, for example, if you were to go to Google Scholar, oh, that's the other announcement. Sorry, we will be having classes tonight. So those of you who are part of SOC University will be doing like a hybrid of what we used to do. We're not going to do classes like the way we used to do it. That being said, we will be having classes on Thursdays and Fridays. Sorry about that. That's what I was forgetting. And we'll be trying to do those about 6:30 New York time on Thursdays and 6:30 New York time on Fridays. So tonight will be 2 classes out the gate, and we're gonna go back, I believe, to we'll have our classes. They'll be put out for you guys. So if you're interested in seeing how the classes work, they will be free this week and next week. You'll still have to go through Patreon. So look through Patreon, become a free member if you'd like or whatever, and you can get those classes for a second. But then after that, they're going to go straight to hashtag SOC University only. All right. And even after we have the class, we'll probably, the recording will then end up after a couple of weeks, we'll end up making it for SOC University only. Okay. But if you'd like to try out the class, see what it's like, and then therefore see if it's something you want to be part of, you feel free to join Patreon and be part of SOC University and get some of that, right? Also, too, all the stuff that we teach at SOC University, we keep on there, so you can always go back to recordings, look at stuff, ask questions and things of that nature, and have access all the time to it. But we will be doing like a hybrid thing and try it out to kind of bring back what we were doing before. We won't do it every night of the week and even Saturdays like we were doing before, because I just don't have the time to do it. And we might even have some new teachers from time to time popping in. Okay, but that's what I forgot. I forgot about that. So make sure that you have that on there. I'll try to send that out on Google Calendar invite as well. Alrighty. So, but yeah. So today, once again, we're talking about law and case study. Law and case study. So it's important that we connect with the word through law and case study, right? And the reason I mentioned the classes is because even in sovereignty, we talk about law and case study. So if you were to go to Google and go to google.com, right, and that gives you one place to look through a search engine they set up. There's also something else on Google called Google Scholar. If you were to go on Google and look up Google Scholar, then you could actually Google a bunch of things as far as law, and you would have the actual case study that you can look at to see how are these things used, right? Or how did the case go through? What was the case that allows you to do this and such? What is the case that allows you to make sure that your artificial person or your corporation is separated, from the natural person, etc. Like there's things you can go on there. Brown versus Board of Education. You can go on there to see what actually happened when persons were talking about that A word that rhymes with extortion, and see what happened before and what the case study is. You can look for just about anything, but then also you can look up the laws. Right? So you can Google the laws. You can also Google the case study. It's important that you comprehend that the Bible is in fact law and case study. So many persons lose what the Bible means when you don't even look at law and case study. How you doing, babe? My wife is on the Honorable Amma. As always, check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N. Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Love you, babe. Thank you so much for being on with us. Right? So when we look up law and case study, it's extremely important that we look at what? Law and case study, and we protect it, make a safe place for it. Because the second that you allow yourself to come outside of the law, and the second you allow yourself to not look at a lot of these things to inform you through case study, right? What are the cases that I'm looking at? Then we've already lost the safe place for the word in our lives. So we have to make a safe place for law and case study. Hey, Shalom, Marcus. Anything else that you got? I'll say hello to you. I guess that's the best you got. Remember, I think I even told Cats, like, that's one of the Ricky Williams thing. Persons come on here because I guess, that whole black people, it's usually black men to do with a black people look alike type thing. And so I have hair over my face and on my head, so I must be Ricky Williams. Anyways, so law and case study. Law and case study. You said, do we glorify Jesus? Nope, we glorify Yahashua, which is his real name, right? If you'd like to be able to actually see what that means, and so be it. But law and case study, right? Law and case study. So a lot of persons are not about law. I think I said shalom, Sister Monica. If not, please forgive me. So law and case study. How you doing, Sister Dawn? If somebody's not into law, they're going to miss a lot of what the word has to say. Period. Especially those who believe in an Old and New Testament, even though that was something that was recently written in your Bibles. So to give glory to Old Testament and say that say that you give glory to the same Yah or the same Elohim or the same Most High. Thank you, Sister Monica. How you doing, Sister Donna? To say that we glorify him, but we don't glorify all of his word, while he says all of his word shall remain, is somebody who's obviously mixing iron and clay, as we talked about on Monday when we spoke on a safe place for clay, right? And I would suggest, if you've never seen us go through Daniel, we did a pretty intense study of Daniel. We didn't get a chance to go through Daniel 9 nor Daniel 5, but we did do a pretty intense case study concerning Daniel. So I would suggest that you guys actually kind of look that up and then look up another series we have on our playlist on YouTube called Revelation Revisited. How you doing, Brother Keith? So, am I right? Were you saying you're blocked or something on TikTok? I might have seen that wrong. Popping up on a bunch of stuff that was popping up the last couple of days. But yeah, so law and case study. Law and case study, extremely important for us to get into, right? How you doing, Sister Jennifer? Law and case study, extremely important, extremely vital. Right, okay, we'll try to look into that. You're not the only person, I guess, that's saying either they're blocked or they're not letting persons make certain statements, or some persons can't go live. I think it might be them turning everything back on. Not sure. Some of us got certain strays, unfortunately. I'm praying that's it. How you doing, Sister Shima? So law and case study. Law and case study, once again, extremely vital, extremely important that we go through. Because if one is trying to talk about the so-called Old Testament, and they say, well, this is where they mess up. They say, oh, those are just stories, or those are just things to reveal Christ is coming, but we're not supposed to keep any of those things anymore, right? Well, then this is where we get into a weird place, because the law says, do not steal, right? Now we know that the word thief is mentioned, but here's where it gets interesting. Where in the New Testament does it really go into do not steal? I know it mentions a thief, right? But where does it go into do not steal? It says it's bad to be a liar in the so-called New Testament, but where does it really get into a commandment where it's just said do not lie? Right? We have to recognize that these things that they're speaking on come from somewhere. There's some congruency, there's some relativity somewhere. Right? These things didn't just happen. Thank y'all for the love. Right? How you doing, Geek? How you doing? And this is Select Raj. So, or MIT Raj, excuse me. So these are the things that we're talking about. Right? If these things we're talking about, we have to ask ourselves, how are we saying that these things are law? Paul says, right, Romans chapter 7, verse 7, if there was not a law that said do not covet, then he wouldn't have something to prevent him from lust. Why? Because lusting after something, right, is coveting. Coveting is doing what? Wanting something that doesn't belong to you. However, somebody would say, oh, that's law, don't worry about it before. And then somebody say, you shouldn't worry about what Yah has for you is what he has for you. Don't worry about what's for somebody else. Well, yeah, that's a law. And we have case studies to verify how Yah looks at that law. How you doing, Miss Ladybug? You see, law and case study. That's right. And if we're not careful, we bastardize the scrolls. What does that mean, by the way? To be a bastard just means to be fatherless. And really not even to be fatherless. That means that your father is not putting you in the position that you deserve. Right? So for us to separate ourselves from our father and his word and his laws is crazy work. You said people say the law is done, but believe in the Ten Commandments, but they all tell on themselves when they say being gay is a sin. If you believe that or any part of the word, all of it is valid. Right, exactly. Well, it's not even an opinion. That's a contextual fact, right? Within context, how you doing, Prince? Within context, somebody says, I don't believe in homosexuality, right? And you're saying you don't believe it because of what the word says. Well, you don't believe it because the law calls it abominable, right? There's certain laws and principles, period, no matter what. And as we continue to grow and work in what Yahweh has for us, we have to protect, we have to make a safe place for the laws and for a case study. If one is going to become an expert at this sword called the word of Yah, right? If one is going to become an expert at this two-edged sword, old folks used to say it cut you going in, it cut you coming out. Now that's not exactly what they meant by two-edged sword, but you get the relevance of that statement, right? If you're going to master this sword, if you're going to put on the helmet of salvation properly, right? Make sure their breastplate is on correctly, right? If you're going to make right the helmet of what salvages you, gets you back to your original intent in your head, your breastplate of righteousness to protect the lob, the passion, the heart, and internal organs, the core of everything, putting on the belt of truth so that even the things that you're wearing, chain metal, and even other items might be able to make sure that they're not loose fitting, so you're not getting snagged on things during battle, right? And having an extra weight and stuff swaying you the wrong way. If you're going to put on the shoes, right, that have your feet prepared for peace, right? And the shod, meaning literally that it was something that you stood on as a foundation, peace, and you put it around your feet in a manner to where it was almost, you couldn't tell the difference between where the foot started and the shoe began, or where the foot ended and the shoe began. They were tied together in such a manner, right? If you're going to make sure that you have the shield of faith to quench what? The fiery darts, the spiritual darts, the things that are coming in the spirit, right, against you, coming from the wicked one, coming from the enemy. And if you're going to make sure, of course, that you have the sword of the spirit, you have to have proper law and case study. I'm sorry, you said on TikTok, is anybody freezing on TikTok? Am I freezing on TikTok? No? Okay, you're saying you weren't. All right. So, so, thank you. So, we have to recognize real quick that there's no law clear. Okay, thank you. So we have to recognize that law and case study is important. And for many, the Bible's not law. So once again, if you look at this and you say you shouldn't obey the law, then this is not for you, or you were mixing iron and clay, or you were trying to get into the Talmud, or you were just somebody who doesn't care for it as what it's originally designed to be. How you doing, Brother Rodney? If I didn't say so already, right? So if somebody comes to you and you talk about the Bible and you start talking about law and they decide, no, I don't obey the law, then they don't obey the word, because the word is law, right? I know this is like simple stuff, I promise you, but we got to lay the foundation, right? But this is kingdom sense, not common sense. And sometimes you got to get a word that just is reminding you, right? Building you back up, just strengthening the foundation, right? So whenever somebody comes, that's right, you can't pick and choose. That's right. It either is or it's not. So whenever somebody comes to you and says, hey, I believe in this, but I don't believe in the law, they don't believe in this as far as what? As far as that it being something that's a kingdom and that you have a king. Because anything that a king decrees must be established. Anything that a king decrees in a kingdom is how you dominate the kingdom. The king is the ruler. And so whatever the king says, his word is law, because whatever he says is the rule. He is the ruler. On a ruler, you have measurements. We measure what we're doing, what we're building, by the ruler. So whoever the ruler is tells us what we do. This is why we have a chain of command. And in the chain of command, it's important that those of us who are in chain of command are speaking the same way, talking the same way, and not doing things that are opposite of each other, or opposite of the word, or opposite of the vision, or opposite of the kingdom, opposite of Israel, opposite of Yahweh, etc. Why? Because if we do these things in an opposite manner, we're in opposition to each other, and then there is no rule. One of the biggest reasons it's difficult, whether you're in camps, whether you're in churches, whatever the case might be, one of the reasons it is so difficult to continue to be in righteousness is because we are busy having different rules. Salah. You hear what I'm saying, beloved? We are different. We are busy having different rules. So if you're in a church and you're a Roman Catholic, are your rules the same as somebody who's an Episcopalian? Problem, right? If you're a Baptist, are your rules the same as somebody who's a Methodist? Right? If you're a Kojic, are your rules the same as somebody who's AME? So we can tell something's off. And so now what happens is we have to say, because everybody's so busy being autonomous, all right? Preachers who were trained in churches, especially, you already know where I'm going with that. Autonomy. Some places they like autonomy, some places they don't. But autonomous, especially in Baptist churches, there's other places too, where autonomy is something that's a really big deal. In other words, autonomy is supposed to be an automatic governing. Now, they changed the word because what they're saying is the pastor and what he says is supposed to govern this church or whatever. Problem with that is, though, is that that's not what autonomy actually means. It means auto. Auto. If you have an automobile, the automobile runs because of a system. There's a system of parts. There's things that if you do this, this happens, this happens, this happens. This the gas or the runs over this or is introduced to this, or certain things run up the spark plugs and cause a spark, or this happens and that happens, etc. Right? If there's a hole in this, then this will happen. If the catalytic converter is out of whack, then this is going to happen. Right? There's certain things that happen. There's if you get a yellow light, the yellow light might be because of this, that, etc. The third. It's a systemic thought process. It's auto. Right? It's supposed to run on its own, and if something happens to be out of pocket, you got to make sure that you fix it so that the system stays in place. Problem is, though, that persons are not worried about systems being in place. He said they don't model honesty, which is actual law and truth. How you doing, Queen Cheetah? Right? So we have to recognize that you're dealing even with auto. The auto isn't correct because the auto is systemic. Auto means it should be automatic. That's why we teach what we teach about kingdom and nation building, because that's what the Bible declares. It even says when we come back together in the last days, there's supposed to be a nation, a peculiar people. There's a peculiar nation. You don't fit in, you come together. A holy nation. You don't fit in, you're set apart. Holy, whole, being one. Aleph, right? Aleph, one, whole, holy, right? You're not supposed to fit in. A chosen generation. Many are called to be able to come into what Yah wants, for it's not his will that any would perish, but all would have everlasting life. But few are chosen. Few will do what it takes to be what they're called to be. Right? You see all these different things that are there. This is law and case study. And as much as persons want to try and get away from it, you're going to have a hard time representing Yahweh's word correctly if you're not going to be into the law. Right? So we have to recognize that these terms are very important, and we must protect what it is as law and case study. How you doing, Tamara? Right? As law and case. If it's not law and case study, then I don't know what you're reading. Right? By the way, if you talk about our story, or what is called his story nowadays, but his story is not ours, right? But nevertheless, his story or our story or something that is historical, you must recognize and realize that even Isaiah says, who shall believe our report? Paul repeats that, who shall believe our report? Right? So when you talk about our story, it's our case study. A study of who? Of those who are kingdom, those who are Israel, those who are grafted in. Yes, because even there are those who are grafted in, but once you become grafted into the tree of Israel, what are you? You are Israel. And if you're going to be in Israel, be Israel. If you're going to leave, then leave. If you're going to be in and out, Yahshua says to the seventh assembly in Revelation chapter 3, the assembly of Laodicea, he says, hey, I wish I knew if you were hot or cold. He said, I wish I knew, right? You hot one day, you cold the next, you're in on this, you're out on this, right? But he said, you're lukewarm. And because you're lukewarm, I must vomit you or spit you out of my mouth, out of my body, out of the assembly. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it all the way. Right? He preferred if you weren't going to do it, just straight up be like, hey, I'm not going to do it. He dealt with Paul when Paul was cold. He had more respect for Paul than he does for some of us who are wishy-washy. Because at least Paul was out there. Look, if Paul was out there, he was all the way out there. He was offering Negroes. He was saying, yo, I'm here to take anybody that believes in the Messiah or says that the Messiah has come, I'm here to take you out. And use Rome if I have to. I'll use the Greeks if I have to. I'll use Israel if I have to. I'll use the Sanhedrin. I'll manipulate the law, whatever it is. But he said, I'm all in. And there was more respect for Paul, where he said, okay, Paul, if you all in on that, if I can just show you that you're cold and show you what hot looks like, oh, you'll get it. How you doing, Positive Energy? Como está mi hermana Sherry? Gracias por tu presencia. Right? He said, I need you to get it all the way. Right? You thought you knew Christ. You thought you knew Christos. You thought you knew Mashiach. You thought you knew Mashiach. But once you came into acknowledgement of who I really is, hey, why you kicking against the pricks? You know you can't win this one, right, Paul? Like, I know in your mind you swear that you were on fire, but you freezing. Y'all remember that game we used to play back in the day? Was that I can't remember what it's called, but you close your eyes and it's kind of like almost like except out of water. It's kind of like Marco Polo, and somebody would say, you know, you're warm, you're cold, cold, freezing, up, okay, warm, hot. Paul thought he was on point, and Messiah had to come to him and say, hey, you're freezing. you're way gone. Right? It's okay. You called it freeze and melt. I don't know. Probably different names for whatever. But y'all remember that? Some of y'all remember that? I'm telling them myself. Right? But you know, we had games like that where you're freezing, you're free, you're cold. Okay, hot, warm, hot, heat. You're right there. And Paul had to have some Paul. He had to have the Most High come and say, hey. It's a red light? Okay. He had to have, how you doing, Sister Michelle? He had to come to him and say, hey, you're off point. Oh, that's what the guy needs to call it. Okay. Right. So he said, you're way off point. And so a lot of persons are way off point. If you don't recognize the Bible as law, you're not going to read it correctly. And if you don't recognize that there's case study in it, you're not going to read it correctly. Here's one on case study. All right. You ready? Here's one of the simple ones. Persons do this all the time. This is poor apologetics. This shows Dunning-Kruger effect, and it ends up with a lot of straw man sensations rather than us actually dealing with the word correctly and how it should be. How you doing, Russ? Thanks for being on. So, for example, a brother who wants to have multiple wives will come in, right? This happens quite often. There's sisters sometimes that support this foolishness too. I pray for you. I don't even know where to begin with that. I guess because, you know, we beaten some sisters into submission so much that they just trying to function, I guess. But a brother will come in and be like, see, the Bible says that so-and-so had multiple wives. Okay. Is that law or is it case study? How you doing, Miss J? You see, we can just, real quick, if I know that the Bible is law and case study, or any of the scrolls are law and case study, all right, is that law or is it case study? Come on, it's case study, right? Pretty simple. So if somebody coming in, Pastor Kofi, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah. No, that's case study. Let's look at this case, right? Because there is no law that says husbands shall have multiple wives. Not one that you can show me. You can only give me a case. So let's do some case study. See, when we get there, apologetically, we in a whole nother place, aren't we? Right? Now the burden of proof is not on me. It's on the other person, right? And you never want that burden of proof. I don't need to prove nothing. I don't have an opinion for you. I want to show you what the word says. Thank you for the love, babe. Right? I want to just show you what the word says. So the burden of proof is not on me. How you doing, Elder Select Tamara? Right? So the burden of proof is what? It is not on myself. The burden of proof, then who is it on? It's on the word. It's on the law. It's on Yahashua. He is the word. He is the law. Okay, so when you say, so-and-so had, okay, well, let's look at the case study. Who you going to bring up? Well, Abraham, you know he slept with, okay, time out. Was it Yah's will? Was it Yah's law? Was it Yah's decree that Abraham would sleep and that Sarah would suggest? Sarah suggested, Abraham went with the suggestion. Was it Yah's law that they have a son outside of themselves. See, that's a case study. Let's have proper case study. Well, y'all still kept and took care of Ishmael. No. That's not the question. You see, don't try to don't try to manipulate it. Don't try to. Oh well, see, who are you to talk and blah blah and this and that? You don't even know. No, you ain't got to go ad hominem. Was it Yah's decree? Was it the king's law? Did he proclaim out of his mouth that Abraham should have multiple spouses, multiple wives? He should have children with somebody outside of Sarah or Sarai, even. The answer, of course, is no. So then the next part, case study, right? We don't have case study. In that case, was Ishmael the promise? Because Sarah believed that the promise wouldn't come through them, even though that's what Yah says. So did Ishmael end up being the promise? This is part of the conversation, case study, even going into some of our Muslim brethren who will come up and bring this stuff in front of you too, right? So they'll say, well, Ishmael was the promise, but as far as the word says, right, was in this case study, in this court, right, in the king's court, in this case study, in this law, whenever you come into court, you enter into law, right? When you come into a courtroom, they wear their priestly robes, buttoned up, right? Ready to go. So when you walk into that court, you walking into a place of law. You must respect. You must even realize that the person in a certain position is supposed to be honorable. That's why you call them the honorable such and such, right? So if the person must be honorable, it's because they upkeep the law. Matter of fact, the judge used to be a lawyer. Became so great at being a lawyer that they were able to go ahead and eventually be moved up into being a judge. You said y'all didn't tell him not to either. What are you talking about? See, no offense. I'm sorry, Marcus. Let's have I don't want to. I apologize. Shalom, peace. So once again, so this is a great point as far as case study. So somebody says, y'all didn't tell him not to have sex with Hagar, if that's where we're going, right? How you doing, monster? So let's deal with this case study. So you're saying that y'all didn't. So we go, so see how somebody takes it? And this is actually great. Okay, so let's go down this road. All right, so y'all didn't tell him, right? But the problem is that y'all said you and Sarah will have the promise. Is that what y'all said? Right? Let's just deal with case study and let's deal with the law. Y'all said you and Sarah. Sarah didn't believe. Abraham went ahead, went into the lust bag, or just went into the, hey, okay, whatever my wife says goes. Now watch this. After Ishmael is born, it comes up to where, hey, what you doing? I didn't tell you to do that with them. You're still supposed to have the promise. The promise is still coming through Sarah. Is that correct? Which means that Yah told him from the beginning, you're going to have the child. They decided to do something outside of what Yah said because they didn't believe it because they were too old, so they thought. They didn't believe that Yah was in control. So they did something on their own. Yah then comes and course corrects. And then even when Sarah says, I'm tired of Hagar, get rid of her, get rid of Ishmael, Yah says, I'll take care of him to a certain degree because he is your son, but he is not the promise. He's not who I said. You said, where was it said to be law? Is he a king? First of all, I didn't say it's law. I said there's law and case study. And if you're just coming in, Marcus, you got to stay with me, right? Like, I don't mind you being on and stuff like that, but at least I don't want to put anything in your mouth. That's why I was quick to slow down. I think you should give me the same respect, right? So watch this. There's law and case study, right? There's cases where we can see what I said initially, because you're probably just coming on. If not, then you're being disingenuous. So I don't believe you to be so. So let me run this down real quick. So there is no law that says that you can have multiple wives at the same time, right? There are many persons who will look at different cases. And so I said, as we look at the cases, let's study some of these cases, okay? The first one that I brought up was one that say that, hey, this is a pretty easy one, Abraham and Sarah. All right. And what I said is that Yah told, right, a king, whatever a king decrees is law. Now you're talking about Mosaic law, but if you believe, I don't know if you believe in other books like Enoch that come before, the Chronicles of Noah, et cetera, et cetera. But even there's laws, even there's priests, right? We know that there's Melchizedek, right? So there's priests, there's laws. There was a tithe that was given before there was such thing as Israel, and before there was such thing as even Mosaic law. So laws existed before Mosaic law. And anything a king says is law. Right? If a king decrees it, it must be established. Why? Because if the king decrees it, then in his kingdom, in the king's domain, is law. You said Lamech. We're going back to Lamech. Lamech, we're dealing with what? Lamech, the son of Enoch? No, I said Melchizedek. Right? Or actually, I'm sorry. Lamech is the son of Methuselah. So Enoch, so Lamech, you're talking about, or yeah, Lamech that you're talking about is the grandson of Enoch and the father of Noah, and he didn't even do what he was supposed to do with Noah. That's why Methuselah, who you're talking about, the grandfather of Methuselah, raised Noah. But anyways, this is law, right? And Enoch even got into things. So you say Lamech was not during Mosaic law? Exactly. I don't. Okay. All right, we're getting to a place where either you're not listening or you're being disingenuous. I'm not trying to, I can't tell through, small comments on this, so I'm not going to assume. But let me just say this to those that are listening, right? I just literally said there's law, and then there's also something called Mosaic law. Just like, for example, if you were to go into a courtroom, there's common law, right? Right? But there's common law, there's law of equity, there's maritime law, there's law of admiralty law, right? That being said, those are not necessarily the same as talking about public and private law. That being said, both of those come under something called substantive law, right? And substantive law comes under uh, um, natural law, and natural law comes under universal law. So, for example, universal law is something that is universal, even meaning, by the way, when you put your hand on that Bible, universal law is the law of the universe. What does universe mean? Universe means that you are talking about a single spoken sentence, one verse sentence, right? But if I talk about natural law dealing with stuff is as the nature of the one who spoke the laws of the universe. This is why you cannot patent something that is considered to be made by the Most High. Right? This is why you cannot patent things that are made by the Most High. Right? Follow me real quick. Right? We're going to be going into sovereignty and stuff with these classes and stuff anyways for those that are coming. But just follow me. Right? And Yah's law doesn't change. Thank you, babe. So this person, if Abraham was doing sacrifices, if Abraham was tithing, Moses and them end up what? Giving sacrifices and tithing. The first sin that's done from Adam and so-called Eve, right? What Adam and Ayazar, when they sin for the first time, guess what? When they sin for the first time, what happens? When they sin for the first time, there's an offering that must be made. The offering does what? It covers their sins and also covers their nakedness. Nakedness meaning that they actually realize that they've been naked, but the Holy Spirit's not with them, but also too covers them as far as their shame. How you doing, Brother Ali? Right? So, yes. So when we say there's an offering, somebody might go to Mosaic law. The reality, though, is that Yah's law always required for sin, there must be an offering. Right? That's just the way it is. So somebody looking at Mosaic law, not realizing. So going back to what I was saying, you have universal law, and then the nature of the one who spoke the physical things into existence is called natural law. That's why you cannot patent. If you were to go out and see something growing behind your house, you can't patent it and say, I own this. You have to change it and alter it. Once it is not the way that Yah intended in its original intent, right, then you can go ahead and patent it. But if you're going to but if you just say, hey, I see a juniper tree outside, that's mine, that's mine. I'm the first person. I'm just going to say this is a juniper tree. Well, you can't patent it by law because the Most High created it. That's right. Once you genetically modify it, then we can talk about it. So same thing. That's why we have to make sure we have a safe place for law and case studies. See, somebody's trying to modify this. Now let's go back to what we were talking about with Abraham and Sarah. With Abraham and Sarah, they were told specifically, you will have the promise, the comes through your union, through your marriage. Sarah doesn't believe it. She offers her maidservant to Abraham. Abraham therefore goes, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna just roll with Sarah, and of course probably wants to go ahead and have sex with somebody. So he goes ahead and breaks the law. Right now, we're talking about adultery. We're talking about fornication. See, and all the stuff that's there. You want to make it work because you would like to have as many concubines, so to speak, as you like. But that's not what Abraham was supposed to do. And Abraham never was doing it. And after that, he didn't do it again, which shows that we're right. Like until Sarah dies, Abraham has no other dealings sexually with any other woman. Right before that, so that means that it's out. So even that shows us it's an outlier, and we see that it's sinful. So they're living in a sinful state, and even after that, once again, Sarah has a Sarah is somebody, and Abraham, are having beef with, and Sarah's having beef with Hagar, which means Abraham's having beef with Hagar. He prays to the Most High. He says, "What should I do?" The Most High's like, "Hey, I never said that was the promise. I never told you to do that in the first place. That's not what I spoke. That's not my law." Right? If we look at this case, we can see very clearly that they did not do what Yah said do. The only reason why somebody would try to keep that going is because you're trying to be sinful like they were. The only reason you would keep that going is because you want to be in sin. Sin meaning to miss the mark. You want to, on purpose, be sinful. How you doing, Sister Shirley? That's it. Like we can keep trying to make this. Now, at one point, maybe you were unaware of that. Maybe you're ignorant of it at one point, but ignorant means you're ignoring it. So I'm going to even give you the thought process of being like, okay, maybe you just weren't even aware of that. But now that you're aware, if you keep on keeping this up, it's very clear that that's not the law. There's no law on the books for it. And when we do the case study, it did not work out properly. Now, once Isaac shows up on the scene, the promise is there. Once Isaac shows up on the scene, now we see a ram in the bush. When Isaac shows up on the scene, now we're getting somewhere with Israel, right? When Isaac shows up on the scene, now we see the children of Israel begin to multiply. When Isaac gets on the scene, now we start seeing the lineage that leads to Christ, because that was what Yah had spoken in the first place, was that Christ would come through the woman mentioned in Genesis 3 and Revelation 12, through the wife, Jeremiah chapter 3, the son that would be given in Isaiah chapter 9. Now we're getting somewhere because we're following the law. So we can see through the case study that had they followed the law in the first place, we would have just gotten there sooner rather than trying to do their own thing. Right? How you doing, twin? How you doing, Manuel? You see, so we have this stuff. Thank you for the love. We have this stuff that's there, but somebody's trying to manipulate it, right? Somebody's trying. Now that's gaslighting. Remember, MITs? We were talking about that last night. That's gaslighting, when somebody takes something and they're manipulating it because they want to go ahead and get you to an emotional response. See, but that's why you have to make sure that you protect. You have to protect the law and case study. So when we do case study, we can find that real quick. Where's another one, right? Real quick. Let's go through these. Another one. Oh, well, it talks about how Samuel got here, and Samuel's father had multiple wives and this and that. Yeah, wasn't that a problem? Wasn't Samuel's mother going through a whole bunch of stuff? Wasn't she having problems in her relationship? Weren't her and the other wife having issues going back and forth, right? Just because Yah can take things and work out all things together for Tabah doesn't mean that he wanted that to be the case in the first place. Right? Oh, let's go to another one. Well, the children of Israel don't even exist unless Yah worked out all things to keep a promise, but guess what? That happened because of sin. And by the way, the sin wasn't on Israel's part, even though he kept on keeping on. Right? But the initial sin is what? Israel enters into a covenant with his soon-to-be father-in-law, right? And his dowry is, I will work for you, right? His dowry is, I will work for you and work for you and work for you and work for you and work for you for 7 years, with the promise of who? The one that he loved. Who did he love? He loved Rachel. Then all of a sudden, Rachel, Leah, and the father trick him, right? And by the way, he breaks the law. He's drunk, right? Don't forget what happened to Noah when he was drunk. Don't forget what happens to Noah's nephew, Lot, when he was drunk. Some wild stuff takes place when you don't have a mentality to make sure that you can have your faculties about you. right? So he ends up not being in a place where he is, excuse me, excuse me, sorry. He ends up being in a place where he's not sober-minded. When you're sober-minded, you can't be vigilant. That's why it says, be sober, be vigilant. Your enemy, the devil is like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Right? So you got to be sober-minded. So here it is that he sins. Right? We don't want to talk about this stuff. We just go, oh yeah, he had a bunch. No, no, no. So Jacob is not disciplined. He's not a disciple. Thank you for the barak. Right? So he's not disciplined. He's not a disciple. And he ends up getting out of pocket. Right? He ends up basically you know, messing up. How drunk do you have to be to say you're in love with Rachel and not even realize you're in the bed with Leah? Right? Especially when you come to, and for the rest of your relationship with Leah, you can't stand her pretty much. But to be honest, right? He keeps his promise, but let's be honest, I can kind of see it. The persons just say because Leah was ugly, blah blah. The Bible doesn't really say all that. Person just kind of put on there. But I would say if somebody tricked me into marrying them, and I have sex with them, and I know by the law I have to take care of them for the rest of my life, I'm pretty mad about that. I'll take care of my responsibility, but I'm pretty mad about it. That basically I ended up being with this person, that my seed has gone to this person, that my virginity, like if everything's lawful, his virginity is lost to this person, right? Her virginity is lost to him. They have a contract on sheets, blood and semen mixed together, culturally wise. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, but he takes on this responsibility and still loves Rachel enough, even in what she did to him, to say, I'll still work 7 more years, right? So that wasn't even his intent. His intent was to be with one wife. Right. They took advantage of the situation. And then after that, you having beef and same thing. Wives fighting against each other. What happens? All of a sudden, right? Because remember, Leah is having children. Rachel, who he loves, her womb is shut by the Most High, especially because she started talking trash too on top of that. Right? So she started talking trash. Most High like, okay. So Leah's womb is open. She has 4 babies. Then after that, when she gives Yah praise and stops trying to impress, the person who she shouldn't have been with in the first place, he shuts up her womb. Then Rachel feeling like, okay, it's 4-0. Now it's a competition. This is not law. This is not how marriage is supposed to work, right? So now it's a competition. So now this lesser wife, or the second wife, who's really the greater wife but feels lesser, and the first wife, who's supposed to be the greater wife but she feels lesser, are in competition. So now here comes Rachel. Okay, well, let me give you my maidservant, right? And Joseph has been put in this place to where, hey, it was already against and against. So now he's in something that wasn't even lawful. If it, right, we could have had 12 children of Israel just through one woman. But instead, he going back and forth, back and forth. So now here come Rachel. Okay, take my maidservant. By the way, following what happened with their grandfather and their grandmother. Same thing, right? See, so you got to be careful. Now here comes the curse. The generational curse is coming down. So now, you take this one, and this maidservant gave 2, but I'm going to go ahead and say these are mine. See, so I have 2. And she like, whatever, you only got 2. I got 4. Then gives her maidservant. Leah gives her maidservant and gets 2 as well. She says, I'm going to take them too. Now I'm 6, and I'm still up 4. And then Yah opens up her womb, at some point again. She has 2 more babies. So now she's had 6 from her own womb, 2 that she's adopted, right, and now there's 8 on one side, and it's 8-2. So then eventually Leah has 2 children and ends up passing away with the second one, the last one of the 12, right? And Leah also has a daughter as well. Let me not forget the daughter. Baby girl was in there too. So basically it gets to the point to where not only is it 8 sons to 2 sons, and then it becomes 9 children to two children, and then you got eventually Rachel will have 2 more and she passes away. Now all these boys, now look at this, and you're trying to make sure that you got as many wives as you can, and forcing that into the conversation. Have you thought about the fact that all these babies are having issues, and these issues and these fights will continue for generations to come, for millennia? Even today, we're fighting against each other. A lot of persons don't even think about we fighting against each other because it was about competition. We compete against each other. That's a spirit that was there even before the so-called white man came into your life. That's a spirit. You see? That's a spirit. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? We're fighting against each other. right? When how you doing, Brother Craig? My wife always brings this up, especially when she's teaching the babies. Joseph with the coat of many colors. One of the issues that's going on there is that Joseph is dealing with something to where, hey, you the firstborn, or at that point the only born of Rachel, and Rachel is the one that supposedly, yes, or Jacob or Jacob or Israel loves, and so Israel, right, Yahadashah, he has this, he has this really big love for her, for her. He has a really big love and appreciation for her, even though she hasn't been able to actually bear him a child. So once she bears him a child, he's gonna get spoiled, be above everybody else, because that's the one that he wanted with the woman he wanted the whole time. So that child gets put first. And so you don't think there was any awareness of that, and that the six with Leah were not aware, and they had a whole thing within themselves, which six were the most important just within that, and then you had the two that were not really of Leah but were Leah's, and therefore they were Jacob's children, but they weren't on the same level as at least coming from the first wife, and then you got the ones that were with Rachel. So how high up are they with Rachel? Because Rachel is considered to be the higher mother as far as in Israel's heart, right? You see what I'm saying? There's so much stuff going on here. This is why even they sell him into slavery, and later on they finally come into contact with him. They don't know that it's him, and when he says, "Go bring me Benjamin," they're like, "Our father's not even gonna let that happen." Yeah, very messy. You see with that? Like they're like our fathers, but we don't even catch that culturally what's going on as far as case study. They're like, our father is not gonna let Benjamin just go like that, because Benjamin, look, bro, I know you want Benjamin to come through, but they're like, Benjamin is is not just our younger brother, but Benjamin is the last child. We already lost Joseph. Right? We lost Joseph. We sold him into slavery. We did him wrong. We did him dirty. Right? There was jealousy and stuff. Now we realize that he's our brother anyways, but it took us a while. And he was having visions and dreams, and the Most High was with them. And we couldn't take it at the time because of how they were being raised and the structure and stuff that naturally comes from them being out of order. So they're like, we can't bring Benjamin because Benjamin is the last one from Rachel. Remember, Rachel passes away basically right after Benjamin is born. They bring Israel into the tent, and Rachel is actually calling, names him something that's talking about how she doesn't see much, coming on. She's dying off, and then Israel has to rename him Benjamin. He came in and saw all these different things, and this was the one that he really wanted to marry. This is the one that not just he worked 7 years for, but then worked 7 more years. This was 14 years of his life just working just for an opportunity to be able to make her his wife. That's the dowry that he paid. That's the love that he has. So when she gave him babies and he lost the first one, then he had the last one, he said, "I'm gonna take care of this one." He didn't let Benjamin go anywhere. Yeah, it's some real trauma, right? As the world turns, but it's real, right? So somebody would look at that and say, "Oh yeah, that's what Yah wants for marriage," and I'm like, the case study speaks opposite of that. And once again, show me the law that tells you that you're supposed to do what? Have multiple wives at the same time. This is why we have to recognize we got to protect it as law and case study. So somebody hears that and they were trying to gaslight, or somebody hears that they try to go ad hominem at really the word, not at me, admittedly. So they didn't really come at me, but they don't recognize what they're doing, right? You're having an argument about something, having a debate, and it's Dunning-Kruger effect. You're not recognizing and realizing what's going on. You're having a conversation without law and case study. Solomon, somebody go, well, Solomon had multiple wives and David had multiple wives. Okay, true that. How did that go? David had all these children and all these babies from all these different women or whatever. How did that go? Did David almost lose his throne? Did David have to go and hide in the cave? Did David have to watch one of his sons try to bed his wives? Technically, Solomon is not even considered to be David's son. He must be the son of David, right? And because, well, so he's David's son, but he had him outside. Even the word corrects it every time, because whenever it mentions David, whether you're talking about Matthew in the lineage, whether you're talking about Luke in the lineage, whenever he's mentioned, it said, or whenever Solomon's mentioned, it says that Solomon came through Uriah's wife, which means that Yah still doesn't really, even though they came together and he took care of her and Yah made it work, that really was not his will. He says, I fixed it, I hooked it up. But for real, he's like, I don't even still, you went outside. Just like with Ishmael. You went outside of what I said. I'll take care of Ishmael. I'll put certain blessings upon Ishmael, but Ishmael is not mine. That's case study. We can continue. Anyone you want to put up there. Solomon, with all the while, didn't it say that basically became his downfall because he started worshiping all the other spirits that they were doing, all the other deities, the deities, the netras, etc. He was worshiping all these different persons as he was trying to marry and trying to make sure that he had all his factions and stuff. Just because he got away with it or just because he lived through it doesn't mean. And by the way, this is part of the reason why the kings, right? He had to watch the lineage of kings get jacked up after that point. Right? It tells us that in the word that he tells Solomon, hey, I will allow you to live, right? And you won't see what's about to happen, but I'm letting you know that there's going to be a lot of wild stuff that's about to happen in your house, happen in the kingdom, because you were jacked up, because you got out of pocket, because you disobeyed the law. And if you disobeyed laws, that includes having more than one wife and marrying outside of outside of the nation. Yeah, he married them politically to do called perfect Israel according to his own understanding. Yeah. Or just took the stuff on it, however you want to look at it. I'm not even going to argue why he did it. I'm just telling you that's not what Yah's will was. So when we bring this up, we have to be careful. Once again, there's law and case study. We have to be very careful when we're reading the Bible. Is it law or is it case study? Yeah, technically, go there, right? God technically didn't even want Israel to have a king, because he was the king. Or we could just say it was always his will that Israel would have a king. It would be him. Now we know that David still sits on the throne in Revelation, so we won't deny once Yah's word, once again, here we go again. If Yah says it, it's his word is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So tomorrow, in eternity, right, however we want to look at it, David's still on the throne, right? So David's still on the throne, not Saul, but David is still on the throne, right? So we recognize that there's still power in Yah's word. He doesn't go away from it. But obviously his will was initially what? That everybody would be under him. If there was no sin, by the way, we don't even worry about having to have a throne of David in Israel. Those are just things that must have came to be because of our sin and our getting out of whack. You said, no, it wasn't. He didn't seek Yah like King David did. He got wisdom, but didn't continue to seek Yah. Well, amen. Yeah, we can say we got to that point too. However you want to look at, I mean, okay, if you're saying that he never sought Yah anymore, obviously he sought him to a point to where they had conversation towards the end of his life. But if you want to say like he stopped seeking Yah and David did, yeah, David did return. I guess David did repent more, right? So, I won't argue that, whatever, at least right now, that's not where I'm trying to necessarily go, but I give you that, granted, right? So, but either way, what I'm trying to tell you is they disobeyed the law, right? Ultimately, is what I'm trying to tell you is like, we're putting this thing in that the law says, and when somebody goes against it, right, there are consequences to disobeying the law. And we should make a safe place for the law to be given, right? Right? Thank you, Manuel. Right? So tada. So we should have Tawada even. So we should have a place where we protect law. We have case study. We have the case study of David. We have the case study of Solomon. We have King Solomon. We have the case study of we have the case study of Jacob. We have Israel. We have the case study of Leah. The case study of Rachel. We have the case study of Samuel's parents. We have the case study of Abraham. And in these case studies, we can see clearly that when somebody's trying to use that, they're not talking about what Yah's word or his law or what he even said to do is happening. We can see very clearly that they're trying to do something that is shifting it. But if we look at the case study correctly, the case study should be based off of what the case is concerning the law, right? If you catch a case, the case should be based off of did you follow the law? We're using law to determine if what you did properly if you did what was right concerning your case, right? And in your case, you have to ask yourself, are you doing what Yah says, right? In your case, are you doing what Yah says, right? In your case. In your marriage, it's always interesting when you see persons having problems with marriage. They usually will talk about all these other things outside of their marriage, or all these other things that they read, or all these other things that they heard. But you don't really hear persons be like, well, scripturally, am I doing what's correct? You know, like you don't hear a person say, well, the scripture says. It's just, well, you know, so and so, and this person did, and blah blah, and this and that or whatever. And when somebody brings up cases, even ask stuff like, hey, well, what did you do, or why did you choose this person, or you know, what is it that makes you to where you have become somebody who's allowed to judge? What are you judging according to the word? And if you're judging them, remember, if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. Judged according to what? The law, the word, right? So in your case, or if you're going to look at other cases that are similar to yours to see how the law takes effect in your case, how does that operate? And you're not going to hear a lot of persons be like, well, the Bible says. They're going to be into, well, I think, or you don't know what they did, or I'm I'm blah blah, or and you'll hear them, and I be listening because I be waiting, because somebody who's been in a relationship, there's no such thing as you did 100% wrong. And even if you did, or that person did 100% right and you did 100% wrong, or vice versa, right? And even if that's your mindset, something should step into where you chose it, you stayed in it. And then, but then that becomes where we try to make ourselves a Christ. We try to make ourselves a martyr. Well, I stayed in it because, no. You stayed in it because what? If it's as sinful as it is, this is why you got to be careful. I'm just being honest, beloved. When you bring me something about whoever you with, if y'all having issues, I'm just gonna keep it a buck. If everything is 100% the other person's problem, I'm gonna start looking up. I'm gonna start being like, what's problematic about you? Why haven't you moved? Well, this person stopping me, blah blah. How are they stopping you? Right? Who are you supposed to be? Who are you supposed to be to make sure you secure her or give her affection? Who are you supposed to be to make sure that he feels respected and he feels heard? Because if there's not going to be any of that, and we're going to act like we don't have any sin in us, I'm just going to be honest with you. Yeah, you might you might be the problem. Ask me how I know. All right, I ain't coming at y'all just randomly. I know because I was problematic. Still am in many ways. I got to get together. Right, but just ask me how I know. I ain't trying to true story. I'm not trying to get on you or be like you less than me. No. Like I'm telling you because I'm that dude. As Paul said, I'm chief sinner. When I realized I was chief sinner, did it help me to realize that okay, I can't really get on anybody else when I'm chief. I'm in charge of the sin. I was the one who did it, and I did it for lesser reasons. I did it for petty reasons. For real, for real. Right? And so when I look at my own case and I put it against the word, when I put it against the law, there ain't nothing that's lawful about me treating persons the way that I did, treating my wife the way that I treated her. Ain't nothing lawful about that. Somebody could try to make it that such. Ain't nothing lawful about that. Where does the Bible say, love your wife the way that Christ did and be petty? I wish there was a verse because I could be petty. My mother's very great at sarcasm. I can be sarcastic and petty all day. I promise you, sarcasm and pettiness usually go hand in hand. I can be petty. Persons will ask me questions. Sometimes I'll tell them outright. I'll tell them straight up, hey, look, I'm just being honest. If you want to go at your organization or your former stuff, or you want to do some legal things, I'm being honest. I'm petty over here, right? So I'm petty wop. So if you want to be petty, you know what I'm saying? Like just know that I'm I got something in my eye. My vision's off because I could be petty. So I'm just gonna ask you straight up: do you want to be petty or not? Right? But I know that I deal with this, right? So I'm not gonna pretend that I don't have these things in me, right? And therefore, even if I can't hear it in the moment, it makes it easier for me at some point to come back and be like, okay, I can course correct because I'm not perfect, right? I'm perfect when I'm in the law, right? I'm not perfect. I'm not, yeah, none is righteous, no, not one. My righteousnesses, remember, it's not just righteousness, but righteousnesses are as filthy rags. Any kind of right, lawful standing I come up within myself is as filthy rags. That being said, when I'm in the law, I can be perfect as my Father in heaven also is perfect. So when I recognize that, that's when I turn to the law and look at the case studies and stop trying to figure out how to make the law what I would like it to be, and I make sure that I appreciate or value it as, because that's what the word appreciate means. So I value it as what? I value it as Yah's word, not to be changed, not to be fooled with, not to be finessed. Then that helps me in my journey to become great as what he wanted me to be before the foundations of the world. You want to be a great husband? You want to be a great husband? Guess what? Learn law, learn case study. And whenever your wife presents you something, right, bring law up and make sure that you do case study. In this case, how is there any other cases I can see in the Bible? But first and foremost, right, when she brings up this case, what does the law say about it? Not just about something that's saying, and now this is where we get messed up. Not to tell her why she's wrong. No, what does the law say about it? Period. How you doing, Aaron? Right, what does the law say about it? Period. We can get into who's right, who's wrong. What does the law say? What does the law say? You want to be a great wife, right? Oh, well, he and blah, blah. What does the law say? What happens? Well, yeah, because the law says about him. I get this a lot. Well, you know, Pastor Kofi, you need to teach him. So you already done messed up because I'm not doing all that. You're not going to teach him and blah, blah. First thing first, he a man. He a grown man. What you talking about? You think I'm here to son him? Amen, Sister Deborah. Right? You think I'm here to son him? No, he a grown man. Matter of fact, he might be older than me. Matter of fact, even if he's not older than me, he could have been married longer than I. Hey, Shalom. I'm sorry, I don't recall. Is it Prophet Karen? Prophetess Karen? Elder Karen? Prophetess Karen? Please forgive me. Evangelist Karen? Please forgive me. I'm having a moment. But glad to see you back, right? Hopefully all is well with you this year. So he a grown man. I'm not coming to him to tell him what to do. If he wants to discuss, I'm going to discuss with him. And when we have discussion, yeah, I'm going to bring up the law and I'm going to look at the case study. And by the way, I'm going to ask him his side of it, because just like you do when you go to court, see, these are lawful terms. Just like when we go to court, hey, there's prosecution, there's defense. Both sides have to be heard. If prosecution is never heard, it's not a great case. If defense is never heard, it's not a proper case or not a proper court, decision. It's not a proper trial. It's not proper tempting. Right? To put something on trial is to tempt it, to get all of the gunk out so we can have pure gold or pure truth, right? Contextual facts that help to reveal truth. So if you're going to come to me, yeah, I need to know both. Now, this is where also too, we got to keep it a buck. If one of y'all is coming and the other person ain't coming, you leaving yourself low. Now, if you're not part of SOC, that's a little different. But I'm just saying, we got to take this into account. Right? And by the way, what does the law even say concerning your arguments? If you were to go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20, it talks about law. Then right after, that's the Sermon on the Mount, by the way. So this is the Messiah. And after it talks about, right, because before that, it says in verses 13 through 16 that you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world, you're a city set on the hill. You're supposed to be an example and you acting like this? You're supposed to be the example. Salah. Forgive me, YouTube. Y'all gonna move around for a second. Forgive me for all the scratching and everything you're gonna hear. Right, but you're supposed to be the example, beloved. What you mean? How you doing, Sister Sheila? What you mean you acting like this? It's just the principle of the thing. No, that's not principle. Principle's the origin. Is that who you are? Is that y'all's original intent for your marriage? Is that y'all's original intent for you as a husband? Hit myself with that one. Is that y'all's original intent for you as a wife? Is that y'all's original intent for you as a child, as his ambassador, that you would act like that? You know your marriage is much bigger than just what happens in your house. Or maybe you don't. How you doing, shoppers? This is law. This is case study. What did Paul say concerning your marriage? Let us love ourselves, right? Let us submit ourselves one to another as unto our Lord, as unto Adam. And wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, because you're a reflection of what? Of the assembly, of the body. And husbands, love your wives as Yahushua loved the assembly and gave himself for it. Why? Because you're a reflection of the head, or of the body, which is the husband. And so when somebody sees a husband and wife, they should see the Most High in his assembly. That's right. Come on, babe. Amen. Our marriage. I'm gonna just keep it a personal just for a second, right? Y'all can listen in for a hot second. But babe, our marriage affects the world. That's why I got to be a better husband. day by day, daily, every day, trying to get better for you. And I know that I do things that are not always righteous, but I'm going to get better every day. Why? Because our marriage affects how other persons even look at marriage. It does that mean that I'm perfect behind the scenes all the time and stuff like that? No. Right? That being said, though, I'm working every day to get better and striving. And I'm going to have my bad days, I'm going to have my better days, but I'm going to strive to get better every day. All right, now y'all can come back in conversation. Right? But I'm just saying, like, you know, your marriage affects the world. Thanks for saying it that way, babe. Like, the world is looking on how you deal with marriage. The world is looking at how you deal with marriage when you're single, because you know you're still supposed to be a wife, even if you're not physically a wife. And you're still supposed to be a husband, even if you're not physically a husband. In other words, you're supposed to be pre-qualified for it. So persons are supposed to watch you, even when you're by yourself, sis, and be like, wow, you reflect how Yah should take care of his wife, and you reflect how somebody should serve their husband. Right? Somebody should be looking at you, brother, even when you're single, and be saying, man, you know what? You're a reflection, and you don't change, and you're comfortable with who you are, and you're a peculiar person. And you know what? I'm happy and thankful and grateful that you stand on business. And when everybody else is having girlfriend at the girlfriend at the girlfriend, you still waiting, you in your work, you're getting yourself together. Man, when somebody finds you, right, or when you find your wife, that woman's going to be blessed. That's how they should be talking about us. You said a crime against the law is a crime against all followers? He said, usually at work, so you never get the catch. Come on and get it. How you doing, Sister Monique? Come on and get this word. When one understands the importance of ministry of marriage, Yah is glorified, right? Real is rare. Like all these things, like they're here for us. Your marriage, I've said this before, your marriage is a political statement. Right? That's why you got to make sure, right? I'm not even just talking about color, even though, to be honest, yeah, I think color is something we should make sure we introduce the conversation, stuff like that, for real, right? Because how persons see you in the world is by color. Let's keep it a buck, right? That being said, though, I don't want colorism to be the thing stopping you. But that being said, I'm not just talking about color. I'm talking about even like, have you thought about when I get into a marriage, I'm making a political statement. Every time somebody sees my wife, every time somebody hears my wife speak, they hear me speak. And not just that, every time somebody hears my wife speak, they hear Israel speak. And every time somebody hears my wife speak, they hear the Most High speak. That's how important your wife is. That's how important your wife is. Every time they hear your wife speak, you speak. That's how important your husband is. Every time your husband walks down the street, they say, that's your husband. You know, when I was when it was Elder Alma only, and she was working, she had a job and stuff, and I had no job, and I really didn't have any money coming in. I had pennies coming in, could barely, if we had to be with each other, I don't know if I could even afforded the rent, you know, at the time where we were living and stuff. Actually, not, I don't know, we couldn't have, at least not on a regular basis when we got together. That being said, right, I humbled myself. You know, when my wife went to her job, her stuff was steamed. Because in my life, she's esteemed. I know I'm being a little poetic with the word, so to speak, but just follow me, right? She was esteemed. If she went somewhere, it was important to me that she went looking her best. So she, right, her clothes, she was out there doing. So guess what? And I like doing laundry anyways, but laundry was done, right? She didn't have to worry about dishes. She didn't have to worry about certain things. And even if I was frustrated, even with we was whatever bickering a little bit, guess what? Like when it's time for her to go to her job, like cut that off. You hear what I'm saying? Right? And my wife, when things started going stuff, and I started to do things that I was picking up, and then I had to take over, and I got to a place where I could take over things financially. We were actually kind of forced into it through situations. And really, I look back at it, it was Yah doing his thing, right? But as I finally got to a place to where she knew I had her back, and even financially and stuff like that, and I was working crazy hours. Like I might have been literally doing like 16-hour days, right, at least. And we would keep 30 minutes a day to eat together. So I would come by the house, we'd eat together, and then I would be right back out or whatever. And we did what we had to do, but we had each other's back, right? I didn't worry about laundry. I didn't have time for it, right? I never asked her, can you do the laundry? I never said, can you sort the clothes? Can you fold the clothes? She did those things. Why? Because she's my wife, right? She never asked me. I did those things. Why? Because I'm her husband. right? I'm just saying, those are those are things that we think are so simple, but they're like things that we don't like. There's certain things that don't have to be said, right? What don't have to be said don't have to be said. You ever heard somebody say that? It seems weird, but that's real talk. What don't have to be said don't have to be said. Yeah, thanks. And by the way, I need to make sure I don't think I got your car at this rising, so I'll make sure I get it today. Yeah, but yeah, she don't got to worry about is there gas in her car. Even when I wasn't making that much money, you ain't got to worry about that. That's not on you, right? There's just certain things what don't have to be said don't have to be said. Right? She didn't have to shovel snow. Matter of fact, I was actually not feeling that well, feeling real bad. I'm gonna give you all the details, but I was feeling real bad. She got out, she started shoveling snow, and I was like standing there for a while. She doesn't know this part, but I was standing outside and I was like, I'm hearing somebody shoveling, but I'm not seeing anybody. I didn't even think to look. We got some trees and stuff set up, so I had to look around them. But I didn't even think to look on our property because I'm like, why is snow being shoveled? And then she was shoveling the stuff on the steps. I was like, she's got kind of irritated with me, what she should. She was like, you're not even feeling that well. Like, you need to rest. You taking days off, blah, blah. You're still not taking care of your health, blah, blah. And she was right. She was right. I'm not even saying this is righteous. She was right. But guess what I did? I took that shovel. And then come to find out, I ain't even need to. They actually did salt everything down where I am. They don't always come out to where I am to salt everything down. But I spent about 45 minutes, an hour out there that night with ice, like picking at it with the shovel. Got an iron shovel, picking at it, and then scooping it through, making sure that if cars came through or whatever, they would have some traction around her car because we don't want nobody sliding into her car, which almost happened a little while ago. But I'm saying all that to say, right? Like there's certain things, but it doesn't have to be said. Doesn't have to be said. When you love somebody, those things happen, right? When you love somebody, those things happen. And we don't have a mindset of that. Like, for better or worse, sickness and health, death do us part. What do you think you signed up for? What do you think that means? What Yah has put together, let no man tear asunder. What do you think that means? Are you ready? I don't think persons real. Like, are you ready to go to the depths of not being the same person? Salah. Well, go on, Audrey. How you doing? Like, are you ready to go in depth? She said I get upset if she does man tasks. I kind of do, even though sometimes I do be lazy a little bit for real. And she like, she type of person, she a go getter. She like, if you ain't gonna do it, I'm gonna start doing it. And that's and when I see that, so I move. I'm not gonna act like I'm perfect with it, but yeah, she done open doors, a lot of stuff, right? I'm just trying to tell you how you doing, Sister Nakia. I'm just trying to tell you, like, are you ready to go to like, and even the part of losing yourself. And men, this doesn't hit us on the same level it does sisters, but it affects us the same. We just don't think about it. Sisters go through it where they be like, man, me having to change my last name, which by the way is not cultural per se, but persons think, oh, I got to change my last name. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. Right? But you're not supposed to be the same. Not just for the sisters. I said it affects brothers the same, but I know for the sisters it hits different what I'm talking about. Right? Because so much in society is supposed to still be based off of you, being under the thumb of a man. Right? I get it. I'm with you on that. Right? I'm not with it, but I'm with you. I empathize. I'm trying to empathize as much as I can as a man. Right? I know I don't empathize on the same level as what a sister would. I'm just saying I try to empathize and try to learn from you all a lot of times, usually as much as I can. But I'm saying all that to say, yeah, we're not supposed to be the same. This is why if you fast from anything, you're supposed to ask your spouse. Because you are not your own. You bought with a price. Love each other the way to reflect Yehoshua in the assembly. If Yehoshua, watch this. See, this is what, once again, here we go. Culture, dowry, right? You ready for this? You are bought with a price. The dowry was blood. So if you're not willing, husbands, to go to the point, if necessary, I think we should protect ourselves as much as possible. If necessary, needs to be put on this. But if you're not ready to go to the place, if necessary, of blood being spilled on behalf of your spouse, then you're not ready to be a husband. Right? If your mindset is not, I'm going to do everything in my power that my wife doesn't see me expire before, right? I want her to be, if we have a choice, she will be healthier than I. Right? If we have a choice. Now, if she's just choosing not to be healthy, or you're choosing not to be healthy, that's different. But I'm talking about if I have a choice. If I have a choice, that's my responsibility, is to make sure that she would see me be sacrificed for her and not the other way around. And I know there's wives that would sacrifice themselves, but guess what? As much as I love y'all for even doing that and stuff like that, that's not your responsibility. Did I say Shalom, Bradley? If I didn't, please forgive me. That's not your responsibility. That's not even how it's supposed to work. Right? And if we got this, see, because there's also the flip side of it. I'm not gonna make this all about marriage today. Right? That's kind of turned into that. I just want to like help you to recall and to bring back to your remembrance, to remind you, to put it back in your mind. Right? That there's certain things that's my responsibility, babe. Well, when I was by myself, I ain't had to, and I was raised by my father to not need no man. I mean, that's great, but your father, was right to make sure that you didn't have to depend on a man and that you could have your own work and do this or whatever. But he should have also trained you to make sure that the same way that you have respect for him, and the same way that you still, when talking about, my father told me not to be, but if you needed to run into your father's arms, his arms were open. Correct? Right? And your father wanted you to make sure that you were going through school and stuff and that you can get your degree. But just because you got your degree doesn't mean that on the day of your graduation, if you wanted, you couldn't have sat on his lap like a little girl. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, your father's supposed to protect you. And when you get married, he's supposed to say, okay, now you're supposed to go to a level that I cannot as her father. Because I can never be her husband, but you can be her spiritual father and her husband. I can be her example of a husband and even spiritual husband to a certain degree, but I can never be her physical. All right, I can be her physical father, but can never be what she needs me to be all the way, because she can't become one with me. Right? And I say this, here we go, something we say all the time. And if you're hearing this for the first time, sisters, I would ask you to once again hear every word that I say, and not just go off of hearing it the first time, because I know, because of misogyny and even because of misandry, for real, and because of feminism and because of red pill and because of all this infighting back and forth and us keeping up the Willie Lynch stuff, we don't hear what I'm saying, actually what I'm saying. But I'm gonna be Holy Spirit led, and I'm gonna be solid on it. I'm gonna say it a few times just to make sure you hear it correct. There is not a woman. Hear this, right? Hear me. I'm gonna say it more than once. So don't. Some of y'all gonna be mad because you're gonna think I said something that I didn't say. Hear me, beloved. There's not a single woman that has ever been created. Uh-oh. Yep, I'm going there. Somebody gonna say he talking like he knows about every single one. I'm telling you what it is. There's not a single woman that has ever been created that wants to have a job. I'm gonna say it again. We're not gonna salah yet. All right, I want you to hear me, because some of y'all gonna get lost, some of y'all gonna leave, some of you gonna say no. Hear what I'm saying. There's not a single woman that has ever been created that wants to have a job. I'm gonna say it one more time, and then we'll say salah, right? But I'm gonna say it one more again, because I know there's somebody who heard a piece of it, or you think I'm going somewhere that I don't know. No, hear what I'm saying, beloved. I'm about to give it to you. Okay? All right. Hear what I'm saying exactly. Don't try to take it somewhere else. Hear what I'm saying. Now, if you hear what I'm saying exactly and you have an issue with it, by all means, right? I'm not a woman, but I'm here to tell you. And I've heard this I got this from women. I got this from elder women like 20 years ago. When I heard this, I was like, that was a wow moment for me, right? I'm going to say it one more again. There is not a woman that has ever been created that wants to have a job. Okay, salah. If you don't know what that means culturally, that means pause and think about it. All right, what do I mean by that? It doesn't mean you can't have a job. It doesn't mean that you can't have a work. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a business. Matter of fact, Proverbs 31 woman. Somebody already went there. I felt it in my shunda. Proverbs 31 woman says you should have a business. That being said, you should be protected. And one of the things that you have been for so long is unprotected. And so as you've been unprotected, you've started to do things that are against your nature. right? Natural law declares that you don't have to have a job and that you should multiply your husband in the areas that he protects you in, right? That's not your only reason for being on the earth. We're talking about marriage, right? So your husband, or even your father, or even a father figure, somebody should be there and have some kind of relationship with you on some level that allows you to feel what? Protected. Now, a lot of us have not been raised in that, and we're trying to. That's why when I say, like, look, as I've said before, I'm not trying to tell anybody what you have to do, what not to do, blah blah. Well, we're giving you the word of Yah, right? That being said, when I'm saying stuff to you like, let's get these businesses together. When I'm saying stuff to you like, let's call and talk to each other. When I'm saying these things, I'm trying to tell you because we did not get raised in a society like this. Even if you were for a hot second, you came out of it, and a lot of you don't believe that this is possible. Now that we're realizing, for us, it's not just virtual, it's reality, and we're starting to see some stuff come out of our being obedient to the virtual space and now the physical spaces and things like that. We're seeing marriages pick up now. We're seeing children growing up in this way. We're seeing that persons are keeping this. We're seeing persons get elevated. We're seeing businesses come together, right? This is just but a taste. We see the land stuff is going to come together. We see we're going to be eating our own food. Like we see, like we're right at the precipice of this. And what I'm trying to tell you is do this stuff, get this stuff together, be in line with this, make this an everyday thing. Because for many of us, matter of fact, I'm going to be as bold as to say for all of us. Everybody listening to me, you cannot say that this has been how you've acted or been raised 100% of your life. This is why we got to get back to law and case study. We cooking. we cooking today. Was that the James Harden? Right, we cooking up today. Not sure if righteous. Oh wow. Hmm. Wow, babe. I've never heard anybody say that before. Wow. Hmm. That makes me like emotional. It's like I gotta get myself together. I've never heard that before. But that's yeah. And my wife is my primary work. Yeah, she said if you didn't see it, she said my husband is my primary work. And I just kind of hit that hits different coming from your wife. Ah, okay, I'm trying to get myself. Oh man, but yeah, my wife is my primary work. That's why the Bible even says, "Whoo." Hmm. That's why the Bible even says, you know, husbands, right? Or if you desire the office of a, right? The Bible declares if you desire the office of a bishop, you desire the allergies, right? If you desire the office of a bishop, you desire, or of a pastor, right? You desire, or a helot, or a leader, you desire an excellent or tabal work, um, right? But let you first be what? The husband of, or let you be somebody who we can't lock up, but so let you be somebody who's righteous. And then what comes next? It says, be the husband of one wife. If you can't rule your house well, then you shouldn't be ruling any assembly or being a ruler, being a guide, being the measurement for any assembly. Mm. Yeah, thank you, babe, for saying that. Mm, that's a word. Okay. Uh, all right. That's an empowering. That make you want to get to work. See, that's my love language too. Words of affirmation. So she just fed me for the next couple of days off that. All right. Let me. that's as great as any meal she's ever cooked. She can cook. All right. Uh, okay. I'm trying to get myself in order. All right. But yeah, you see what I'm saying. So we have to recognize that law and case study. Right. That law and case study. Right? It's important that we value the law and case study. What does the law say concerning your marriage? And what are the cases that you're looking at? Even in your Bible, before we get to Ephesians 5, when it talks about husbands loving your wives and wives submitting to your husbands and loving, submitting ourselves one to another, it says, what are you feeding yourself? It asks, or it gives a command, really, or it gives a suggestion if you want to, make it light, where it says, hey, what are the psalms and the spiritual songs and the hymns that you're feeding yourself? Right? Like, where are you getting this from? How you doing, Wajari? Right? How you doing, Monk? Or Monkey Bones? Excuse me. Where are you getting this stuff from? How are you feeding yourself? Who's feeding you? Who are you listening to? With our own people, by the way, with our own nation, who are we listening to? Right? Why is it that we have no other options to listen to other than Kamala or excuse me, or Joseph or Donald? Why is it your only reference point? Why is your reference point Black Lives Matter organization? Now, I know my life matters, but why is it the organization teaching you? When the organization is actually doing more things to affect the LGBTQ plus and putting the black face on it, right? Why is your child going to schools? Like, how is it that we say we don't know what happened to our children, and our children were taught to go to schools that never teach us? So, of course, your child is not going to revere you when you send them to a place every day that says, "Hey, don't think of me as anything." You know, we don't think about these things because, once again, we're not thinking about culture, we're not thinking about law, we're not thinking about the importance of these things. But let's just keep it a buck. You're sending your child to school. You're sending us, your child is going to school right now. I don't care if it's an HBCU, which, by the way, HBCUs are not yours because HBCUs are all named after and all are led by families that are what? That are not persons who are black. And I'm not here to be anti-black. I'm just trying to tell you. Somebody will be up here talking about HBCU, this and that. Look up HBCUs. Look up the history of your favorite HBCU right now. You're going to find that that thing is not named after you. And in a couple somebody's probably going to find a couple of discrepancies with what I just said, like literally a couple of them. But you'll find maybe one or two. That being said, okay, fine. Look at the family who started it. Look at where the money goes. You'll discover very quickly. By the way, look at the curriculum. Who does it have to be approved by? Forgive me, because we're not or accreditation. Who has to accredit it? The best schools used to be non-accredited. Now they've changed that, and even their accreditations are not necessarily going to the same place that yours are. But look at their accreditation. Who has to accredit it? In other words, your so-called, how you doing, Sister Nadine, if I didn't say so earlier, your so-called school that's accredited has to be accredited through somebody that's not even you, or else they don't consider it to be on the same level as theirs. So even if they go in there, the only reason why you're learning what you're learning at those schools is because somebody who doesn't care about you and oppresses you is telling you better learn what they do. And it used to be something that you fought for because they used to have it separated to where, hey, one of the reasons they said that they can go ahead and give them jobs or give them positions, etc., that they couldn't give you is because they had an education. But now that you're starting to get the education, guess what? Their children aren't even going to college anymore. Right? And I'm not trying to say anything to be mean because I know that our sisters are the most educated. Our sisters, right? The sisters, y'all go to college, y'all go to school more than anybody else. Keep doing what you're doing, keep expanding your minds, right? But I'm just here to tell you, I don't think persons even caught it. That basically, if you look at the last several years, especially the last 10 years, especially the last 2 to 3 elections, you'll discover who goes to college the least, who votes the least. Young white men. Why? Because that stuff don't affect them. Why they told you to sell your cryptocurrency? Who demands they get paid in cryptocurrency nowadays? Yeah, we done got away from trades. Now nobody wants to be trade. Nobody wants to work hard. Nobody wants to put their hand in the dirt. And I get it because look, I'm an intellectual and I don't be putting my hand in the dirt that much myself. I'm gonna have to get used to it with this land and stuff, but I don't do it myself. I get it, right? I'm trying to get back out there. I'm planting and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, we don't even look at stuff like that. But that's how we came up. We make fun. It's interesting. We make fun, and there are people, by the way, but we make fun of the Mexican community, talking about how they're always out there and they got all these persons living in the same place and this and that or whatever. And they do all these persons living in the car. That used to be us. When we came up, that's how we came up. Whatever we had to do is what we had to do. I remember going on trips and the whole family went on trips and you might have had 2, 3 rooms and somebody's feet was in your face as you was trying to sleep because that's what that we had to do what we had to do. Now you done got to a certain level, you forgot that you had to do what you had to do. Right? When we look at our own case, right? Let's look at our own case. When we look at our own case, what are we getting? What are we seeing? How are we operating? Right? This is one of the things that I'm talking about once again with the Bible. It's law and case study. It's ours. It's our law. And it's our case. And we forgot that. We forgot how we came up. We lifted up Drake. No shade. Well, take it as however you want. Because I never really liked Drake like that, right? I always thought it was weird that somebody who's clearly, and by the way, clearly most rappers are not from where they say they're from. That being said, right? Drake clearly was not anywhere close, right? He was not like us 15 years ago, however long he'd been around, right? That being said, it was always weird to me that we would lift somebody up and allow this dude. It was irritating to me. Like this dude, we was gonna let him tell us started from the bottom, now we here. Wheelchair Jimmy? Right? Like the same stuff he's doing now, he was doing back then. You know, he sued what Degrassi? He sued them back in the day. He said, I'm about to start my rap career and it looks bad for me to be in a wheelchair. He sued them because he was acting the part. Wheelchair Jimmy, he ain't never walked the walk. I stole that from Knoxville, right? But Wheelchair Jimmy, he ain't never walked the walk. What you mean? Right? Like from the beginning, he wasn't walking. You know, like somebody who is sitting up there telling you that he sees more thought process in the Jewish piece. He was never trying to be like dad in there. Matter of fact, if you look at his lyrics, he was busy telling y'all that he never had a father in his life. His father came out and put him on blast because his father don't know how to roll with the stuff properly. That's why his father put his business out there and stuff, and he be getting caught, right? But this is he was never about the law, and we should have seen. We got so much case study of cats that we keep putting up and acting like they supposed to be for us, and they're not for us. And I'm not trying to say he less black. I'm not saying because he got a white mama. I'm trying to tell you, look at his actions. He even look. If you want to talk about the Jewish thing, because now he's trying to sue, and part of his suing, he's trying to say that when they said they not like us, they're talking about the fact that because he's Jewish, which is not part of what Kendrick is saying at all, but they're saying because he said he's a colonizer, but he telling on himself because we know there are a lot of Jewish persons that were colonizers, right? Like we act like, oh, it was just the white Southern man who had a twang. But look at the names and look at the infrastructure and look what was happening in the trade, whether it be in the United States of America and the masters, so-called masters that were here, or the ones that were over there in so-called, Middle East and Africa. Right? But we were so quick, we don't check the case. We don't look to see, okay, hold on. We've seen this before. Where have I seen this before? Have I seen somebody come out of nowhere? Have I seen somebody look, I'm not trying to, because I'm gonna mention some names and some of y'all gonna be mad. Right? But it is what it is. We gotta have some conversation. We gotta have some honest dialogue. But love, because once again, law and case study, see, it's not just something that we keep as far as only when we study the Bible. Of course it should be when we study the Bible, but if it's a way of life, we should be looking at this, right? Right? Case study. Have we ever seen anybody come out of nowhere before and just all of a sudden be up there and make sure that they were under a certain group of persons who run the music industry, and whatever was being put out, we just automatically act like it's supposed to be there? And really, when we look back at their life and we look back at their career, we're like, they're not even what they were supposed to be. We act like there was never a Milli Vanilli. Like we forgot. And Milli Vanilli wasn't even supposed to get caught. They just ended up getting caught. No face, no case. Mm-hmm. You hear what I'm saying? Like, have we not seen this? Right? Well, Malcolm even went to a point of saying, Malcolm X, Minister Malcolm Shabazz, he went to a point of saying that, we're the only community that acts like because somebody's famous, we should listen to what they have to say as far as being leaders of our people. And for real, look around. He's just about right still to this day. There are persons that know more about what, like it's wild. We have persons that we can look up to. We have Dr. Francis Cress Wilson. We have a Dr. Joy DeGroy. We have a Dr. Cloud Anderson. Dr. Cloud Anderson, I wouldn't even say necessarily as a leader, but that being said, he runs game. He gives us game. We have a Dr. Amos Wilson. We have a Dr. Lai Africa. We have a Dr. Sebi, which he didn't call himself doctor, nor did he go to school for it, but he was called doctor by those sisters who actually put that title upon him where he was at the time. Right? We have these persons. Right? We have a Frederick Douglass we can look up and see what he says. Right? You have a Neely Fuller Jr. I know persons feel different about him, but at least you have somebody who at least he's in the room. If you're talking about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, some of the reasons why she got to what she got to is because she listened to Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. and she didn't believe him at one point. She said, the older I got, I realized he was speaking game. Right? If you're going to talk about Sister Soldier, Dr. Neely Fuller Jr., influence. Right? If you're going to talk about Dr. Sebi, slightly influenced by Neely Fuller Jr. So even in that, you have to put them in the conversation, I guess. Right? But that being said, we have these names. We have these leaders, but we look to entertainment, not to law, but to entertainment. Now, this is when we really mess up here now, right? Because we're not looking at law. If we were looking at law, that's one thing. But we're looking at what? Entertainment value. We're not worried about law. We're worried about entertainment value. We're not worried about case study. And by the way, if we look up case study, there were many persons who entertained in the Bible. Right? Janus and Jambres, at least the names that we use today. Magical practicing priests. They were entertainment. Pay no attention to what Moses is doing. We'll entertain you. The Bible runs it back. 2 Timothy chapter 3. Right? Be aware of these magical practicing priests who capture silly women laden with diverse lust, who break up homes and families with magic tricks, entertainment. Right? You still dealing with a lot of entertainment. The President of the United States is an entertainer. All of them are for real. But he's an entertainer. You know what? I'm going to say something that a lot of y'all aren't going to like. It is what it is. Kamala Harris, one of the reasons why Kamala failed the way that she did. Kamala Harris, one of the reasons why she failed the way that she did. You ready? Kamala Harris failed because she wasn't that great an entertainer. She tried to do the entertaining thing. She tried to hoop. Y'all remember that she gave a speech? If you listen to her speech, was it in the D? I don't know if it was in the D, somewhere around there. I feel like it was in the Midwest somewhere, or upper Midwest, or whatever you would call that area. Please forgive me if I'm off. But, you know, she was like in the D or something, and then she was in Pennsylvania. And gave the same exact speech. And where she was in one place, maybe Chicago, I can't remember, but somewhere like that. Somewhere in the Midwest and Pennsylvania, she gave the same exact speech. One place she was trying to hoop. She was literally out there talking about, I've been from a place where, and she was thinking because, you know, they was from that place, they was just going to cheer. Gave the same speech in Pennsylvania. They're supposed to be more hardworking, you know, blue collar, get the stuff done. And so she changed up the speech. It's entertainment value. Right? It's entertainment value. One of the reasons why she didn't get where she was supposed to get is because she couldn't entertain. Obama entertained y'all better. Obama couldn't dance, but he at least, you know, he could do this. And so y'all were like, oh, y'all have never seen a president that can two-step. Right? And this is simple. This ain't even, he wasn't even doing much, but you know, he put his little hands up. He do something like this every once in a while, right? He this close to throwing something, but he hit you with this. And y'all, oh, that's so smooth. Look at him. He's a great, what? Because he two-stepped. While he was two-stepping, he was writing, you know, laws and stuff, making sure it was okay for all these drones that y'all see, and now in the United States of America too. He was making sure that you didn't have to, while he had Michelle up there doing her two-step with Ellen to have a little more of a bop to her, while y'all was like, oh, look, she got a bop. That's, you know, and I'm trying to be like her. Which, while she was doing that, talking about children being healthy, he was signing stuff to make sure that you didn't know what was in your food. It's entertainment. Right? Nobody can, right? And when we bring up law and case study, I want you to hear this, beloved. When we bring up law and case study, there's going to be a bunch of persons who are ready to try and cook us. They trying to cook you because you would dare say, we need law and case study. Right? Destroying school lunches, right? Same tools of the enemy, right? We study case. And I'm just trying to tell you, beloved, they trying to mess you up. Right? That when you try, when you, and that's when we know. So once again, for us, this is law and case study. When you start bringing up law and case study, and somebody says, "I don't look at that as law," then you need to realize, oh, they're not in the kingdom. Now, I'm not saying they can't get in. I'm not saying that we stop giving them a chance. I'm not saying we don't give them word. I'm not saying you got to cut them off 100%. I'm just saying know your enemy. Uh-oh. Somebody didn't like that because that means that I'm talking about your friend, your family member, your boo, your BFF. That's daddy. That's mama. That's my little girl. That's grandbaby. Right? But you got to know how war works. In war, you're on one side or the other. In war, you can even sit down and drink tea with each other. But then when it's time to fight, you got to fight. Right? I don't celebrate Christmas, but there's even really heartwarming stories where in World War I and even in World War II, I believe, to where persons were fighting back and forth, and it was Christmas time, and persons were just like, hey, man, we need a break at least. And they actually took time out, and they actually like came and they shared cigarettes, and they shared little cakes and desserts that they had, and they even like talked to each other, and they sang songs and all that stuff. But once the songs were over, guess what? You go over there in that trench, and I'm going to go over here in this trench. And somebody got to shoot the first shot. And once the first shot is fired, and that part doesn't feel so great. How you doing, Anthony? Thanks for being part of the community. You know, that part don't feel so great. But it's real. Right? And I would not be responsible if I didn't make sure that that was something that was known. Right? And the same way that happens is the same way that it's happening in the system that you're in. I know you don't like it. I know you don't like it. I'm not mad at you for not liking it. I know you don't like it. It's real in the field, right? I know you don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like saying it. But I love it. I act upon it. And for real, you need to know that your enemy, right, has persons that you are friends with. Right? You can this is gonna mess with somebody's mind, but it is what it is. Right? Your enemy, right? Hear what I'm about to say, beloved. Your enemy can be friendly. Just because they're your friends doesn't mean that they're not your enemies. Like, that sounds wild, right? And some of y'all who say that that's not my friend, that's just because it's not your friend doesn't mean it's not your brother or your sister. Right? Love and like are not the same thing. You might not like somebody in the kingdom, but you still should love them. Right? And you got to recognize that a lot of us are making the mistake of saying that because someone is my friend, I value the friendship. And so since I value the friendship, I value it more than what the Most High says, which is that just because they friends doesn't mean that they're not enemies. Just because we having tea and crumpet today doesn't mean that we won't be firing at each other tomorrow. Just because, right? This happens all the time. You guys see this happen. Didn't the election season just finish taking place? And some of y'all still dealing with all this stuff where a bunch of persons that you with, you know that they pro-Trump, this and that, and a bunch of persons you know that they pro-Biden or pro-Harris and all this stuff, right? And so because of that, y'all are having this weird thing, but y'all gonna try and find a way to what? To work with each other because you got to make that paycheck. So you ain't got to like them, but you'll work with them. Y'all might even get to the point where y'all start joking and stuff again and having fun, but in 4 more years, you're gonna be looking at each other sideways again. Because you'll realize that even though you can be friendly and y'all even get along, and hey, if they needed something, if their children needed something, just because your enemy's child is they're your enemy doesn't mean that you wouldn't help feed their child. But it doesn't mean that's your what? Doesn't mean that person who you're trying to be friends with doesn't mean that that's your watch this. It doesn't mean that they're part of your nation. And yes, if you want to call me a nationalist, so be it. By the way, being a nationalist just means I'm proficient at being a nation. So call me that all day, twice on Shabbat. How you doing, Kirsten? Right? But yeah, they're not part of your nation, and we are trying to make friendships more important than the nation, and that's wrong, beloved. Right? Ain't nothing more important than the kingdom of heaven. We're trying real hard to make excuses for it. But that's why there's certain things. Look, mama, I love you. But if we're talking about this, we got to talk about righteousness. I can't excuse unrighteousness. So if you're not gonna be righteous, that's cool. Just you can't hang out with me while you're being unrighteous. And if you start being unrighteous, I'm gonna have to leave. Or if it's my house, you might have to leave. Or even if it's my house, you can stay here and be unrighteous. Just don't mess my stuff up. I got stuff to do. And we don't want to talk to persons like that. We think that's disrespectful. We think that's not honoring our parents. No, I honor my parents' righteousness. I honor you as my parent. I honor you as whatever. If you're gonna talk to me, if you're not gonna talk to me, I'll honor you. But I'm not gonna honor you as far as unrighteousness. Right? Like our parents will even do wild stuff to us. They do stuff to you and growing up and all these different things, and then it comes out later and you feel a certain way about it. They don't want to hear about it. How dare you tell the psychologist this or blah blah and that or whatever, right? But the reality is that you were doing unrighteousness. What is righteousness? The word righteousness, or if we're talking about the word righteousness just in general, it means to be in right lawful standing. This is what we have law and case study for. By the way, this is why at some point we're going to have to talk about protecting the character or protecting even the value of the word, because every word in our culture has characters to it, right? So we're going to have to bring the whiteboard out before we end this series that Ravach HaKodash has had us on. But if we're talking about these different things or whatever, that's why law and case study is there, because many persons, once again, even in speaking truth, have never read a Bible. If you've never read the original, or if you don't even know the original context, let alone even the original characters, let alone even the original wording, then how have you ever read it? So many of us have never read the origin of anything in the Bible. You've read somebody else telling you what they are sometimes trying their best to get you to comprehend through their prism, but you've read more things through the prism of someone else than the prism of those who believed in it. And you're supposed to be the keepers of it. But how do you keep or guard something and you don't even know where you're supposed to stand watch? Come on, former service members. Y'all know I ain't lying. If I serve watch, I can't be 5 miles away from my watch and somehow serve watch simultaneously. I can't be at home, right? I'm talking about I was I was I was on the south part of the base standing watch at gate 7. Right? You got to man your post, and if you're gonna man your post, you got to man that. You got to show up. If there's no man at the post, then right, or woman, right? But if there's no being there, if there's no service member there, then nobody's watching. Nobody's keeping anything. That's the first general order, right? One day we had to do a series. I'm be honest with you, I done forgot the order and structure of the general orders. It's been a minute. I'm gonna have to go back there. I'm gonna have to do some study. That'll probably be an interesting case study for us to go through at some point. Start looking at these general orders. Persons would like probably comprehend structure and order so much better than with these general orders, right? But yeah, if nobody's in position, then how are you guarding anything? If you don't have the weaponry, how do you guard? Right? There's some places that you don't need much. There's some places you don't even have to have your belt with you. But there's other places, shoot, you better be strapped up. Right? I'm giving older weapons or whatever, but shoot, back when I was in there, you better have your 9, right? Which was a Beretta for us. You better make sure that you got your shotgun, or hopefully you got yourself together and you got your M16. Right? Some people prefer the shotgun, whatever. Depending on where you were, you might need you might need to make sure that you have an M60, or if you ain't M60 trained, somebody around you who's trained better be able to man that thing, right? You better make sure that you got your mace. You better make sure that you got your baton, right? And by the way, in order to hold each and every one of those, you have to be trained, right? Law and case study, you have to have been through some of these things. How you doing, Mr. Tracy? Right? You have to have gone through some things. Right? What do I mean? So for example, I was able to carry mace. So guess what that meant? What do you think that meant? If I was allowed to carry mace, what do you think that meant? Walk down this road with me real quick. If I was allowed to carry mace as security, as a military police officer, etc., What do you think, as a master at arms, I could carry mace? What do you think had to happen for me to be able to carry mace? That's where I was trained to do so. What else? So how? So great. So I was trained. Thank you. Yep, that's what I was looking for. I had to get maced, right? That was part of my. Thank you, Brother Javon. That was part of how you doing. That was part of my education on it. If I'm going to carry mace, then I have to get maced. Why do you think that they wanted you to get maced? And it was funny too. We got recorded, so we watched ourselves get maced. I look crazy after I got maced. But why do you think they mace you if you're going to carry it? You have to be trained the levels of escalation and effects in case taken from you. That too, right? So if I spray mace, especially if the wind is the wrong way, or I don't see certain things, or I pull it out too late, or somebody who's got mace somehow gets to me and it gets on me and gets in my eyes or gets around me and I'm smelling whatever, I have to already know what it is to go through it. It's like for those who went through boot camp and you had to go through that phase where you had to take your gas mask off. Some persons, like there was the sister, she everybody would always make fun of her or treat her different. She was a little older and stuff and everything. It seemed like she was a little frail. But when I remember to this day, it's like something etched in my mind. And we took off our mask, and she took that thing off, was like this, and just was standing there looking. It was like one of the strongest things I've ever seen in my life. Right? But you take your mask off because, hey, in case you get hit with a little bit of this stuff, or your mask isn't exactly secure the way it's supposed to, or whatever, guess what? You still got to go through. Yeah, Great Lakes is where I went as well, right? But also too, we were sprayed with mace. Why? Because you need to know what it feels like. So before you out here just going whatever grade mace you have, and just going in somebody's eyes and thinking that's your first step. First things first, right? First things first, beloved. We got to we got to know what we're doing, and they want you to learn empathy. That's right, Brother Dwayne. You nailed it. They want you to know what it feels like when you use it on somebody. If I don't know what it feels like, right, I might just use it not thinking, right? If you're somebody who has a really bad experience with mace, you're probably not going to be the first person to pull it out. And even if you're somebody who doesn't, if you watch other persons get sprayed or watch videos of other persons getting sprayed, right, what's going to happen is you'll see it and go, oh, okay, this is kind of serious. I probably shouldn't just do this to anybody. If you're trained in hand-to-hand combat, we were trained by recon, right? Where we were. So we were trained by recon, and Navy SEALs weren't too far from us too. SEAL Team 8 wasn't actually that far. To the famous one was, or one of the famous ones, but the most famous one probably is SEAL Team 8. But we weren't trained by them, but we were trained by Marine Recon, and we would see them working out and stuff, right? So where we were was a serious place of training. So, but we learned close combat, and they even showed us different things. They never did anything to hurt us, but they even like did a couple things to put some pressure on you or to show you like, hey, I could pop your Achilles if I do this, and if your Achilles is popped, like you can't walk. Right, like they were showing how to get that thing to roll up from the heel and it come all the way up where you done. You can't move your leg no more. Like they were showing some things. They were showing you when you down on the ground, like this can happen, or this is what happens, or if I put more pressure on your nose, you feel this, like you're like, I feel it. And they're like, yeah, I could break your nose, right? But they're trying to show you those things. Why? Because if I get into hand-to-hand combat or I get in close combat, yeah, I'm gonna make sure that I win. That's my goal, is to win, right? And I'm the type of serious where I'm gonna make sure that you incapacitated. You're not gonna move when we finish, right? But at the same time, at the same time, I'm also aware I'm not gonna take your life or do something to where you can't ever walk again or something crazy like that either. I've been trained how far to go. I've been trained to control myself. So even in the training that we're having, going back and forth, you're learning those things to make sure what's going on. You said, so do they pew pew 12? Well, I mean, you definitely gonna shoot. You're gonna shoot at the range, um, and you're gonna see what the weapons do. Two things. Sometimes we even, well, I don't know. It wasn't me that did it, so I ain't worried about it. They probably wouldn't know who it was anyways. When we got trained, they even used. We weren't supposed to, but we even used y'all know about the tracer rounds. We weren't supposed to use them in just training, but we used them in training and stuff to see, especially with the M60 because it looked cool. We weren't supposed to do it, but we did use tracer rounds. We would see things get hit. You would see even the target. Like this is when I knew how powerful the M60 was, right? And that's probably the to be honest, personally, there's bigger ones out there, but personally, that's the biggest one I ever fired, or at least the most powerful weapon I've ever fired personally, right? When you see the M60 um, fire and hit, at first I didn't know that if I hit the target. You know, you know why? Because when you hit the target with an M60, right? Like the targets we were using. So obviously you're using something that splatters or something. That's one thing. But when we were hitting the targets we were hitting, I didn't even know if I was hitting the target because it don't move, right? It's powerful. The bullets are powerful, and you can use bullets to do all types of stuff, you know. But the bullets we're using, they're powerful, but it rips through. And so we were so far away at the target that we were hitting. Like they were like, "Oh, you're hitting it, excellent, excellent." Like I got expert on shooting, right? Different weapons, but I was like, I can't even tell that I'm hitting this thing. How am I? I'm hitting it, right? But they were like, well, if you was in combat and you was hitting somebody with that thing, like you would tell, right? But it rips straight through. So it was like, but that's when I realized like the power that I had in my hand. Like, oh, okay. So this thing like just rips stuff to shreds, you know. And it goes through things, and it goes through buildings, and it goes through this, and it goes through that. Like it's like a hot butter knife through a napkin, right? The napkin wouldn't really move. It would just go through it, Like, oh, okay, I see what we're dealing with here, right? But I'm saying all that to say, right, that you learn those things, you see those things happen, even with the shotgun and stuff like that, which I feel like that's one of my better ones. I feel like I'm surgical with the shotgun, even if you give me buck whatever, but like but you see things move. Oh, okay, the shotgun really does damage. If you close, it's crazy. If you far away, it's crazy. If you mid range, it's crazy for different reasons, right? And depending on what kind of bullets you use, and et cetera, et cetera. But I'm just saying, right, like different things or whatever, you learn them, you see them in action, right? You even learn, like, even for example, when we were in boot camp, you're trained to be able to make sure they didn't use real bullets in the Navy boot camp, but you have bullets, at least the simulated bullets going over your head. And you're supposed to drag persons with you and make sure you go through this. And why are you going through that? Because they want to make sure that you recognize what's happening, that you see it for yourself. How you doing, Sister Akita? Do you recognize what's going on? Do you recognize what's happening? Right? Have you gone through it enough so that when you got to drag somebody, now here it is, right? Afghanistan, you got to drag somebody, right? And you go back to the training, you go back to what you went through. Law and case study, same thing, right? Everything that we do, we should be looking at what we went through, right? Prayerfully, that makes sense, right? Everything everything that we look at, we're looking at what we went through. We're looking at a different prison, right? We've been through some things already. Don't let anybody keep telling you ain't been through nothing. We ain't been through nothing. You think you're poor, but really you're rich. You're not Israel. You're not. No, no, no. We've been through some things. We should recognize them already. We have case study here, right? We were put through. We went through boot camp. We went through, being baptized. We went through the stuff that happens when you decide to be baptized. Right, you went through these different things. You went through what it is to have to carry. You went through what it is to go on a 5-mile hike, right, with all that stuff in your sack. Right, you know what it is to have a battle buddy and to make sure. Right, we have case study. You said, should Israelites go into the military? I would say with what I know today, no. Right. That being said, there are many Israelites that are in. You know. I think that we could do some stuff within ourselves to help it. I would say no. I know I don't want my son to go in, but once again, to fight for something, I respect anybody who's wanting to put their life on the line for what they believe in. So I definitely don't like discount or look, hideously upon it or anything like that, or judge in any kind of judgmental fashion. But yeah, to represent something that we know is against the kingdom, I would say it's definitely something we don't want to do. Right? But yeah, case study. We have the law, we have the case study, we've been through it. Right? Or if you haven't been through it yet, that's why you need to get into it. Right? You need to get into it. If you haven't been through it yet, then get into it. right? Today, choose ye this day whom you will serve. You don't have to serve the same foolishness you were serving before. It's not for us, anyways. It was never for us, right? We were tricked into us serving this wickedness, but it was never really supposed to be for us. You were never supposed to be ashamed of your hair. You were never supposed to be ashamed of educating yourselves. You were never supposed to be ashamed of speaking up for your babies. Excuse me. You were never supposed to be ashamed of these things. Yeah, we did fight for something we didn't understand, or we didn't know what we understood, right? So, like now we have a chance, and this is law and case study. By the way, how often should you follow the law, and how often should you study cases? Yam Yasalab, Big Brother Thomas, how you doing? Okay, right, okay, Thomas, right? How long should you study the law, and how often? See, this is when we get into the word. This is when it really messes with me. When persons will read Psalm 1 and just act like it doesn't say, on his law doth he meditate both day and night. That person who does that shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that in its season will give much fruit. And they will not what? Sit in the seat of the scornful, or they won't be in the council of those who are not like Elohim, right? Nor will they like scoff and all this stuff. They won't do it. On his law do they meditate both day and night. Right? And if I meditate on his law day and night, then that means I study cases day and night. So if you haven't been doing this your whole life, then we got a whole rest of our life to catch up. And by the way, thank you, Sister Knife, for getting to that level. That's forever. That doesn't stop when you get to heaven. Amen, Brother Keith, every day. That doesn't stop when we get to heaven. Right? It doesn't stop. It continues. You're never going to stop meditating on the law. So once again, if somebody tells you they're not in the law, you got to check them. You got to ask them. If you're not into the law, then what are you into? Now, if somebody says they're into grace, see, apologetically, we got you. Right? Or you got yourself. Right? Because really, for real, Lamar, or Achi Yasav, or Yosef, excuse me, right? You have to recognize and realize that when it comes to the law, somebody says, well, I believe in grace. Once again, what does that word grace mean? It does not mean unmerited favor. It means charis, charisma, who one is, a pouring out of who one is. So law does not mean, so grace does not mean unmerited favor. See how somebody had to change the law in order for you to study the case differently. This is why we protect the word, keepers of the word. We make a safe place for the word so we can make a safe place for law and case study. You said, isn't grace assistance toward hitting the mark? Sure, y'all can assist you. Right? See, there's a bunch of sermons that we go through, and I'm not mad at them. They're probably, right, there's probably a great sermon out there where somebody started the whole thing and was like, hey, his grace, we need him to be with us. We need him to fill in things. We need him to do stuff. And then they even try to get it to unmerited favor. But grace is who the Most High is. Charis, charisma. All right, that's why even I say to persons when you study, it's great that we have even Strong's Concordance. But remember, Strong's Concordance is not necessarily right either. I know somebody gonna be like, no, not Strong. No, not everything in Strong's Concordance is great. First of all, they're using modern Hebrew, which means that we're already using something that's not original. There's ways around that, but we're already using something not original. So they're giving you a perspective that's from modern Judaism, from a Jewish person's perspective, and not even from a kingdom perspective. Right? How was Strong's Concordance even put together? You remember? Like how was it even put together? Has anybody even studied how Strong's Concordance came together? Not mad at it, right? But how did it come together? Right? Strong's will help you out for sure, right? But it's the beginning of things in your study. All right? If you don't know this is how Strong's Concordance came to be. Strong's Concordance is a person with last name of Strong. That's why it's Strong's Concordance, right? He was a teacher. And he did study words. He taught things. I think he was a professor. I'm not 100% sure. I believe he was a professor. But he taught in school, right? And over time, what he did is he went over the, what would we call it? The tradition. If you didn't know, so there's a tradition. Doctor, okay, thank you, Dr. James Strong. So it's a tradition. But like I said, I think he was what was the word I was using earlier? He's a doctor, but I mean teacher, but what was whichever one. I'm trying to say philosopher. I know that's not what I'm looking for, but anyways, he was a teacher, and he taught in school. And so when he basically went through school, when you look at his concordance, what you'll discover is this is how it came to be, is that he went through the tradition that half of the Bible is written in Hebrew and half of it's written in Greek. That's a tradition. That's not a fact, right? That's a tradition. It's not a fact. Just want to put that out there. So when persons go like, "Oh yeah, the Old Testament." Remember, Old Testament, New Testament is something somebody wrote in. That's not even original. And when persons believe the Old Testament was written all in Hebrew, that's not correct either. What happened with the Bible is actually initially, is that the Bible was written for the most part almost 100% in Hebrew. Now, some person said, well, how is he writing to Corinth? And he was writing even with Paul and Peter. A lot of these persons were actually writing to persons who were Hebrew leaders in other places and still wrote in Hebrew, believe it or not, right? Timothy himself, even when Timothy's writing things out, Timothy, yes, is half Greek, but he's also half Israel, right? He's half Israelite. So when even Timothy is writing things and stuff like that, we're not 100% sure with that, but there are definitely things to where we're like, he more than likely was writing at least a couple of those things he wrote for Paul, writing them in fact, in Hebrew. Right. Yeah, there's omitted documents and all that. Right. So if you go through the translations, the way that it actually works going from the beginning is this: you would have had the scrolls, because remember, Bible is a set of books. That's what the word Bible means. Right? I know somebody wants you basic instructions before leaving Earth. I like that and everything, but the word Bible just means a set of books. It's from a place called Biblios. Biblios was an island that was famous for putting scrolls into the format that you guys now call books today, right? So Biblios was this island where you got a set of books put together. So it's called Biblios. So Bible, it basically just means a set of books, in the style that they did in this place called Biblios. Holy, by the way, just means one set of books. So when they started taking stuff out of the set of books, or they made the set of books, it's really an incomplete set of books, but we still call it the Holy Bible today. We know that the scrolls are holy, but we obviously know there's things that are taken out or moved or changed. All right. But anyways, you had this set of books. But basically, remember, all the scrolls were together. And all the scrolls were together, right? They were kept in temples. They were kept in in the Sanhedrin, but that's not what I'm looking for. They were kept in synagogues. They were kept in a lot of different places. And then all of a sudden, thank you, Holy Spirit, for that. And then all of a sudden, when you get to a place, what happens is the first set was actually in Avda or Paleo Hebrew. And then you get another set that was in Hebrew, a second edition, a second version, if you will. Then you get a third version and a fourth version. Then you get to the Greeks, where the Romans are starting to take this and pick up on it. So what the Romans started doing is they start writing it in Greek, and they wrote it in Septuagint, right? So, or the Septuagint. And so the Septuagint is the Greek version. And then you had Greek versions pop out from there, including even versions that were like Alexandrian, where they didn't even believe in the Messiah or believe that Christ was the Messiah, et cetera, et cetera. And you have all these things that happen. And then you get stuff to where eventually you start seeing it pick up and it's in Latin. And then eventually you start seeing it in French and Latin, right? And then eventually it starts, once Protestantism hits, you start seeing it put in English. And then eventually over time you start seeing it now put in all these different languages, right? But what happened with Rome, right? They wanted to say, especially when persons, and really not even with Rome as much as we think, but I'll just go ahead and credit it there just to make it simple for today without having to go through a bunch of extra holes and hoops to jump through and stuff. Basically, the tradition became, well, it was originally written in Hebrew. We started writing it in Greek. So we'll write the Old Testament in Hebrew and we'll write the New Testament in Greek. No spirituality to that at all, right? But they're just basically being like, well, honor where it came from. Hebrew, this is a very romantic thing, a very colonized type mindset to do, where like you take over a people and you keep the parts that you like a lot and you try to use them to try and say that you are the same people. Rome did it with Carthage, they did it with Greece, they did it with the Etruscans, etc., etc. So same thing happens to this day where we're using something where we're looking at it through a romantic prism and acting like those are the same persons that wrote this stuff. But the Bible written in Greek was a traditional thing. Most of those letters were not initially written. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all that was not written in Greek. They would have been written in Hebrew. And this whole weird thing that also persons try to do now where they were writing or speaking Aramaic, Aramaic didn't even have a way of writing. They wrote at the time in Hebrew or in Paleo Hebrew, in Avda, right? They didn't have a writing system, so they actually used our characters. So when somebody says, oh yeah, they were speaking in Aramaic, no, the Aramaic persons had to use Hebrew characters, meaning that they had to actually know Hebrew in order to get the context. So if somebody says something in Aramaic, it's kind of sort of close, but it's still not the same as just reading it in its original form, right? So what happens with Strong's Concordance is you have somebody that has the same mindset and says, okay, this is why we got to have law and case study. We have to make sure it's law. We have to know what the characters are. We have to keep the word. All these different things we've been talking about a safe place for. So you have all this law and case study. And here it is where you start going to this thing where it's hard to do proper law and case study because number one, well, this guy Strong's, he started, besides a lot of wording he already knew, what he had, he just started keeping the stuff of all his students. So when he'd give his students assignments to learn these words in Hebrew, basically they would be writing out the whole Bible in Hebrew and they'd be writing out in Greek. So he started just basically keeping what his students wrote out, going through, checking it for himself, and then he writes out, he keeps half of what they did in the Hebrew side, and he keeps what they did in the Greek side, and that becomes the beginning of what you guys know today as what is Strong's Concordance. Right? So Strong's Concordance is a nice place, but once again, it's modern Hebrew. Modern Hebrew was not what was used, right? If it's modern, then obviously it can't be ancient. If it's modern, therefore it cannot be original. So how do you keep law and case study and you're not even sure? See, so now the concordance, which is supposed to be something to help you to comprehend the law, is not even there properly. So even with the mindset that we have, so somebody will look at Charis and they'll even put in there, they'll say, well, for Christianity, Christians believe that blah, blah, blah. They have to put that in there to let you know that's probably not what this word means. They do that a lot. Right? Like if you look up the word, when we talk about this word gospel that comes from the word Godspell, when you look up even in the Greek, the word that they're using, that word doesn't mean the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Christ. There's some Yiddish in there as well, right? But that's right. But the word gospel or Godspell does not mean the death, the burial, and resurrection of Christ. If you look at it in its completion, it's really saying that when you look at it, you're looking at somebody teaching what the reward is for those that actually keep the truth and keep the whole law and keep entirely what it says. So yes, the so-called gospel is a truth, but really we're saying if you interpret the law correctly and live it correctly, there's a reward. That's what we're saying. So when somebody preaches, it sounds nice to say, that we believe in the death and the burial and the resurrection of Christ. I'm so glad. Right? It sounds nice, but it's not the truth. Even if you were to go to concordance, it's not even the truth. You see, so we have to what? We have to make a safe place for law and case study. Right? The Bible, this is why we say a lot, that the Bible is in fact law and case study. And if we're not willing to do our due diligence, the persons are going to keep telling you whatever they want, and we're going to keep falling for the okie doke. And it's getting to a place where we have to acknowledge, like, it's affecting our children. Right? We have to have a safe place, even for our children. We have to acknowledge our children are getting messed up off this. It should do something. It should burn you up. That your child doesn't even know the law or doesn't even know how to study. Watch this. Study to show thyself approved. Study what? Study what? Study to show thyself approved. Okay, study what? Thank you, babe. Yeah, study the law. But somebody just, no, study the Bible. So no, study to show thyself approved what? What makes you approved? What's going to make you approved? What's going to make you approved? Study to show thyself approved. What makes you approved? The law. And thank you for that, by the way. If you'd like to, if you feel led to, feel free to go ahead and donate to what we're doing here at SOC. If you'd like to donate even to the family, by the way, those of you, we're working on getting the calendar. We got the paper and everything already. So Elder Alma's looking forward to me giving her a list. So if you guys have gotten your virtual calendar and you want to, if you haven't already, I know some of you have, but if you haven't already, if you want to send a $10 donation, if you're looking for a physical copy as well, I think it's 10 that we're going with is the donation that we are to make sure that we can print yours out and everything and get it sent to you guys. We hope to start sending them out next week. And thank you, babe, for everything that you're doing with that. Right. But if you'd like to give a donation of any kind, you can do so through the Cash App, $find, like you're looking for something. My name, Kofi, the number 1, FIND, KOFI, the number 1. Thank you so much for putting it in the chat. Right. But yeah, like we got to have some honest dialogue, some honest conversation. Study to show thyself approved. Study what? If you don't know how the law works, how do you study it? Right? You know how many persons have LLCs and they don't know how it works? How you doing, Eugene? Now you can have the LLC all day and still not know how to use it. You can have a husband all day and not know how to make sure that the security actually is activated in your life. Did you know that? You can have a husband all day and not know how to activate the security. You can have a wife all day and not know how to activate the respect. You can have a wife all day and not know how it activates things being multiplied in your life. Or she, all right, the marriage being the it, but she multiplies, right, what you're supposed to do. You can have a husband and not know how to activate the affection. You said you have two and don't know. Yeah. So you can have this stuff, but just because you have it doesn't mean you know how to use it. Shoot, a lot of us have money. A lot of us have money and don't know how to activate what comes out of that. It's currency, but you're trying to save it all. It don't even make sense. Persons who make money don't save. There's a currency. You make it. Do you hear what I'm saying? They make it. They print it out. You make it. You're the tree. The fruit comes from the tree, not the other way around. How you doing, Henry? What are you talking about? You don't know how come you're not producing? You're talking about where's the fruit? Where's the fruit? You produce it. Where is the fruit? Where is the fruit? You produce said fruit. I don't see any leaves growing. They come from you. Beloved. See, this is law, even natural law. We don't think about the nature of things. I go to a bank. A bank is where currency is. You got anything ready for you to swim through? What you swimming on? You the vessel. You the boat. When you show up, you supposed to dock in. You hear what I'm saying? Like these things are supposed to be there. Right? Where are you at? Right? We don't recognize this stuff. So law and case study. So if you're reading this and you're not even aware, right? When it talks about fellowship, right? There's fellowships. You're the vessel. These are lawful terms. Let us not forsake the gathering or the fellowship with one another. That's you being a ship. That's you being a vessel. What are you gathering together on? Ships don't just gather unless you're gonna have them to where they're stagnant or where they never sail, right, or where they're getting fixed. Ships don't gather outside of water. So what's flowing? Where's the spirit even flow? You see, like these are things that have to be there, right? You are the ATM. You are the tree. Be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that in its season gives much fruit. Have you considered the cases? How did Abraham's stuff flow? How did Abraham's money flow? How did Isaac's money flow? How did Jacob's money flow? How did Judah's money flow? Right? Like we not thinking about this stuff. This is law and case study. It's important that we catch this as what it is, law and case study. This is law and case study, beloved. That's what it is. And you got to look at the case, right? You might not believe that the case is necessary, or that the case that's going on is something that's for you or whatever, but this is law and case study. This is law and case study. There's cases in here already that tell us how we flow. How do we feed each other? The poor will be with you always. So how do we make sure the poor ate? And what are we going to set up? Even if it's virtually, what do we set up to make sure that if somebody's poor, somebody's like, I don't know how we're going to eat this week or whatever, where's a place that they're able to go to make sure that they can glean from those who have? But then somebody says, well, I'm not trying to give. And you start giving excuses, but the Bible, it doesn't say anything. And I don't really know the tithe. And the tithe is really for the Bible is very explicit, explanatory of what the tithe is and on what offerings are and when we need to give a double portion and all this stuff or whatever. So the second that you keep trying to run away from it, not just with your finances, but even your time, talent, and effort. But yes, let's even be honest, even with our resources. You keep trying to give your resources to everybody else, and then you're trying to figure out why your stuff is messed up. Even within us. Like, that's why I've even had to make it a point, because I'm not talking about SOC, but let's be honest. There's been persons who have come through and literally have come through just trying their best to make sure that they play y'all. Even people trying to play as me, or persons that come in and act like they cool and they off asking you behind the scenes, let me get this, let me get this. I'm not saying everybody, but let's be honest, that's something that's picking up more and more, right? Even in that's why you have laws in place to ensure that whatever's given is put in particular places to ensure that what Yah has for us is done. And we can keep making excuses for it, but if we just kept the law, it wouldn't even be a thing, right? If we kept the law and we had a place that we know this is where the stuff goes for this, then guess what? We go to that place for this. Instead, though, because we don't keep the law, it's real easy for persons to come in and say, hey, give me, 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 give me. If we just made sure we had the stuff where it was supposed to be, and we had stuff in place like the law says, this person, these persons, these persons, these persons, these persons, that's just for tithe. Offerings, this is what we use offerings for. Double portion, this is what we use this for. And then, yes, there can be extra, yes, there can be this and that in between, but also, too, that's why you should have your own businesses and be going to each other. And that way you can already be having the currency and the flow going one to another. And making sure, by the way, if somebody's blessing you, you better be making sure that it flows to somebody else. So somebody in the community should be seeing something. Right? Even if I don't have the money to always give within myself, or SOC has the extra money, I promise you, we find ways to make sure that somebody's getting something from us, through us, or from my family, through my family, or even from me personally, through me personally. Because why? Because it's supposed to flow. It doesn't just go to you for you. So if you're somebody that's receiving, and others ain't receiving nothing, you got to check yourself, because you could be the problem on why we're stagnant, why there's a stop of flow. This is law and case study. This is why we keep saying, hey, get the stuff in order. Get your business. And by the way, don't just be like a lot of us and start the business and never do anything with it. That's not flow. That's stagnant. Oh, okay, I made a couple orders. Okay, this is nice and everything, but I don't want to put no work in. That's what your business is. But then you'll go to somebody else and put in work for them. No, your goal is to put in less work for them, and the lesser work you put in for them, the more you can put in yourself. And then when you put enough into yourself, guess what? It's actually a lot less work. And you get to a place to where eventually some of these brothers and sisters that might need some work, they can work for you. And now you become the reason that somebody else is able to flow into their gift. And you're able to help generations that are not just only through your seed. It's law and case study. We got it all here. That's why I said, as much as I don't know when it is, and I'm not saying it has to be 24/7 all the time. I hope that you guys make sure you get your own properties and things of that nature. But guess what? At some point, you're gonna have to realize that it's about coming together, right? And a lot of this stuff in the Bible does not make sense outside of our unity and our fellowship and our loving one another. A lot of it will never make the sense it's supposed to make in your life. It will never click. It will never work until you work as a unit. A lot of it will never work. It will never click. Will never make sense until you work as a unit. Real talk. Hello. Right? There's a reason why the Bible keeps saying over and over again, come together, come together, come together. Don't forsake the fellowship. Don't forsake the gathering. Come together. Feast of Tabernacles, come together. Passover, come together. Feast of Unleavened Bread, come together. check in, Jubilee, day of Jubilee, 50th day, all of things. There's certain things that don't happen until you come together. That's part of it. That's just, it is what it is. Law and case study coming together, and study the cases on not the only day of Pentecost, but on the day of Pentecost for that year in Acts chapter 2. What happened when everybody came together? I'm waiting. I can't wait to see come together. It's just one day out the year, come together. Yahashua said, be obedient. Go over to Israel. Make sure y'all in the same place. Go to the upper room. Stay there and make sure. And what's been promised, Holy Spirit, as she's been promised to you, will show up if you do exactly what you've been doing and stay obedient. I promise she's coming. And sure enough, somebody says, I'd like to experience the Holy Spirit. Come together. I'm just trying. Baptism. How many baptisms happen to persons by themselves? Oftentimes there were many persons that would be baptized. Not every time, but oftentimes there were many. And if it wasn't, it was at least two, right? Come together. What happens when we come together? What happens when you have persons come together for Passover? It takes persons out of slavery into freedom. What happens when you come together? One person can lift their staff and a whole nation can walk across the sea of reeds on dry land. How you doing, Sister Miko? See, coming together is a huge piece of what's missing in the dialogue. It's a huge piece, a huge problem. Research what happens when you come together in your word. Come together. What happens when a husband and wife come together? A nation is built. A nation so strong that it multiplies and multiplies like the sands of the sea. Multiplies like it's like the stars in the heavens. Multiplies to where no matter how many persons have tried to take us out, including even us doing so through being cursed, we can't get rid of the promise that God has in our life. It's about coming together. You said, hey man, there's a church on every corner, there's a church on every TV station, there's a church on okay. I don't go to churches. But I realize that, yeah, right? There's a church next to a liquor store everywhere. And there's a church here, there's a church there. By the way, there's if you go to Baltimore, one of the worst places to go to Baltimore is where people go to court. If you go to DC, one of the worst places to go in DC is where persons go to court. If you were to go to Chicago, one of the worst places to go right down the street is from where the persons go to court. At the end of the day, persons have to make decisions. See, churches, a lot of churches, because I'm not a Christian, so let's start there. I don't even know what the rest is coming, but I'm not sure what the rest of the thing is, so I don't want to assume where it's going. Let me just be careful with that. That being said, yeah, church is different. Church, the word church, if it comes from the root word cirque or circus. So there's a lot of circuses, a lot of places. Ringham and Barnum Bailey Circus used to be all over the place. Doesn't mean person's lives got changed when the circus came through, right? No offense to those who have passed away. That being said, Billy Graham put a lot of stuff in a lot of black neighborhoods and did a lot of everybody come to Jesus moments. What happened to those neighborhoods? Did they change for the better? So yeah, there has to be a thing of, once again, coming together, not just coming together for a service for 2 hours and then literally going and doing everything different than what you were just saying that you believe in, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But once again, see, it has to be through our cultural lens, through the prism, the proper lens. And a lot of persons are trying to bring things that are improper to the conversation, sometimes just because, once again, they might not have the proper knowledge or intimacy. They are knowledgeable or intimate with other things, able to, look through different prisms. That's why it says, oh, magnify the Lord. I magnify Yahweh with me. Magnify doesn't mean just make it bigger. Magnify through what? Through the prism, right? If you don't put on glasses, you don't see, it doesn't magnify. If you don't get a magnifying lens, it doesn't magnify, right? If you don't get a telescope, it doesn't magnify. Right? If you don't get a microscope, it doesn't magnify. You have to look through the proper lens to see what's magnified. So I could definitely see you magnifying those problems, but to be honest, church problems are not necessarily my issue because I'm not part of the church. You see, my law and case study doesn't come through somebody who would say, hey, even though the word has nothing about Christmas trees, reindeer antlers, fairies that, tell you to put a tooth underground, worshiping half man, half Zeus, being about firmament rather than Hilkiah, not caring about what the origin of the word says, telling persons that you shouldn't obey the law when the king that you say that you are under says to obey the law. Um, that's not my culture. Is not what I'm using to describe things. Anything that I'm still holding on from that, I'm trying to cleanse myself of it and cleanse my people of it, because it's not doing us any favors or any solid at all. So yeah, if you're talking about church, you're talking about something different. We literally just talked about yesterday. If you want to look at our recording of it, I don't know if you would or not, but we literally talked about yesterday making a safe place for the clay and helping persons to comprehend that mixing of iron and clay is literally Christianity, and that's something we're supposed to stay away from, because those are romantic values that have nothing to do with the culture of Israel or the culture of the kingdom. Right. So that's why we have to have law and case study. Somebody who's just goes, my case study is on. Now, once again, this is the law, and this is what we use for case study and the comparisons. Right. So if somebody's in there talking about, well, law and case study, and I studied this case and this case and this case, yeah, you studied the case through the prism of Christianity, or through the prism of Rome, or through the prism of colonization, or through the prism of capitalism, right, or chattel slavery, or plantations, or whatever. That's the prism that you're looking through, or through the prism of racism, or even through the prism of racism, white supremacy, whatever it is. You study through a different prism. That's not my prism, right? It's not Yah's prism, therefore it's not my prism. So when somebody talks about prisons, my prism tells me how to look at it. I look in here for examples. When somebody talks about sovereignty, I have to look through it through this prism. If it doesn't make sense through this prism, then yeah, I've decided that it's not. Not only I've decided, I am persuaded that it's not correct. You see? So that's why it's important that we keep up law and case study. That's all that I have, though. Thank you all. I really don't have anything else. Really, so once again, you guys know, I'm going to put it out to everybody. Anybody who wants to come, you're more than welcome to. But you guys know Thursdays what we're doing as far as everybody meeting up. Except for those who are in England, of course, we'll talk to you guys on Saturday and continue what we've been doing there. But love you all to life. Thank you all so much. Appreciate, love you all. I'm going to go ahead and take my leave. And we will, just as a heads up, we'll try at least one more Tuesday and Wednesday, see how this works as far as me taking days off. I'm not sure it's going to be a permanent thing. I'm just doing so for, health reasons right now. We may or may not continue. Even if we do, I'm not sure if it will be a consistent thing forever and ever in a day, but at least just to give me a chance to have a few days of rest that my body is aching for at this moment. So thank you all for allowing your pastor to take a little bit of time off. Thank you for being diligent. Thank you for being complete. We are still making sure. By the way, if I'm not on today, if there's still some of you who are wanting the word and stuff like that, don't forget we've got so much word. There's stuff that pops up on Facebook from like old stuff. There's stuff that we're trying to put on Patreon every day. There's stuff that we're putting in on social media. So there's always a word that you can get and always something that you can be part of. And of course, with some of these series that we've had from a long time ago, I know there's other person at SOC doing things, but I'm just saying, if you'd like to take those chances and stuff like that, look back at some of the stuff, feel free to. As a reminder, so the rest of tonight's schedule is going to be as follows. At 6:30 p.m. New York time, we will have we'll have 2 classes on Zoom. I will record them. They'll be free, but you have to get the link through our Patreon. So I'm not going to. I might try to put on Google Calendar invite and stuff like that. I'm not sure, but you will get the link through Patreon. So if you're looking to join us tonight on Zoom, just go on Patreon, become a free member. You'll be able to see it. You'll be able to jump in there. It'll be on Zoom. If you miss it, it'll be recorded. I'll let the recording be out there for a couple of weeks before we make it #SOC University only. But you can feel free for today to join us and try it out. We're going to be going back to the beginning. Some of you've taken these courses before that we're doing for the first, few weeks or whatever. So feel free, if you want to revisit it or something like that, or watch the recording if you feel like you already got it together. But you guys know who've taken these courses multiple times. Sometimes you'll get something that you never got before. I might know something now that I didn't know 3, 4, or 5 years ago. We've been doing these things for a while now. But feel free to go ahead and join up for that. Then once we finish with that, let's get to a position. Let's get to a place where. I'm sorry. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. New York time. We'll finish probably about 7:45 New York time or so. But 6:30 p.m. New York time will be classes. Then right after that, 8 p.m. New York time will be our live session. Then right after that, 9 p.m. New York time will be our meeting with those regions that are under me. But we invite anybody, everybody, if you'd like to show up. And that'll be at 9 p.m. New York time. So look for that stuff to be out there. Thank you, everybody who's filled out the forms. Don't forget, even the forms, even if they haven't been reposted in certain social media platforms, all you got to do is go on social media. If you're on YouTube, look it up in our YouTube community section. Just scroll back. If you're on Facebook, just scroll back. I'll try to share it right after the live session so you don't have to scroll too far. If you're on TikTok, just scroll back a little bit, whatever the case might be. But we had the stuff on there for you guys to fill out the forms. So I'm literally just submitting names to persons today. We got to get a head count, and it'll help us know financially what we need to do, whether there's things that we can take care of ourselves or things that we're going to ask you guys to take care of coming up for Passover in Sedona, Arizona, coming up for Passover in Arizona, coming up for the meetup and for Memorial Day weekend in Bible Museum in DC, and coming up for Feast of Tabernacles. There's obviously other things in between, but those are the main things we ask you guys to fill out the forms for. So prayerfully, you guys will get to work on that if you haven't already. I'm going to pretty much, right after this, go into making sure I'm sending names that I should have sent a couple weeks ago, to be honest with, but I tried my best to give you guys the month of January, but we can't prolong it any longer. We really got to get this stuff done so that persons can do what they need to do schedule-wise, financially, et cetera, et cetera. We can do the same. So look for that stuff to be out. Appreciate love y'all. I'm going to go ahead and take my leave at this point. And so don't forget tonight, once again, the schedule 6:30 p.m. New York time. We're going to do our classes. 6:30 p.m. New York time. We're going to do our classes. 8 p.m. New York time. We're going to do the live session. 8 p.m. New York. So much stuff going on. 6:30 p.m. New York time tonight. Classes. 8 p.m. New York time. Live session. 9 p.m. New York time. Meeting. All right. Community meeting. All right. So for those regions, but if you want to come from other regions, feel free to show up, okay? Everybody got it? Prayerfully you do. Thank y'all so much. We really, really appreciate love you all. Thank you for spending time with us. Hopefully you got something out of the message today that will help you. And we're excited that where Yahweh is continuing to bring us and lead us and guide us. So we're going to do our shout out. You got to come over to TikTok for the shout out. And if you've never done a shout out with us before, prayerfully it's something that you enjoy. Once again, if you're looking at calendars or whatever, we're gonna start doing the physical calendar. So if you haven't done so already, we need a $10 donation. If you already done a $10 donation, don't worry about it. We got you. But we'll need that for the physical one to send it to you. And those of you who would like to even find out more information about the calendar, just reach out to us at some of the information that will pop up on your screen. But when you see the shout out, you see persons putting their stuff on there, just feel free to do the same thing they do, and you'll be able to get some more information from us. All right. So love y'all to life. Thank you for being on. Thank you for joining us on multiple platforms today. Thank you for being on YouTube. Those who are on Clapper, those who try to get on with us on IG, on the podcast, Facebook, TikTok. We appreciate love you and we appreciate you. We're going to continue to move as Yah has us. And thank you again for spending some time with us today. And may Yah continue to make all your days wonderful and great, and continue to give you, revelation that, you have not had before. So love y'all to life. Continue to take care. Hopefully we'll see you in class tonight. And we thank you all again. And prayerfully, it's a little noisy outside, but prayerfully you guys will be able to get everything that you need, or hear everything that you need from, on the shout out. So love y'all again. We give our honor and praise to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. We give our praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable Alma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Love y'all to life. Take care. Yeah, I don't know if I said this already. If I am, I'll just repeat it again. Remember, you're loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. Take care, family. Peace.